Who's in the audience this evening to the May 25th session of the Finance Committee, as well as those folks tuning in. Before we get into the actual presentations, I'd just like to take a moment and read into the record the open meeting law, which is as follows. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. Councilors, you have in front of you this evening's agenda, and the pre-planning materials were distributed in a timely fashion. So I would encourage you all to participate in the debate, ask your questions, and at this point in time, I would like
Councilor Kane.
Present.
Councilor DeBona.
Present.
Councilor Finn.
Present.
Councilor Harris.
Present.
Councilor Hughes. Councilor Forrest. Councilor Yang. Present. Councilor Palmucci. Chairman Kroll.
present.
Your second one.
So with that being said, thank you for helping us through the process there. I'd like to welcome to the floor the Superintendent of Schools and Quincy Point native, Victor Christopher, will be joined by finance guy for the school department, James Mulaney. So welcome, gentlemen. I assume that you're going to walk us through a slide deck this evening.
Thank you very much.
Please.
Honor to be here, colleagues with Mr. Mulaney and Deputy Superintendent Mulvey, as well as Vice Chair of the School Committee, Paul Goli, and School Committee Member Barbara Sol. Thank you very much for being here as well. Mayor Cope and the School Committee have been working on the budget for quite some time. And again, with their deliberation, their discussion, and Mayor Cope's bottom line, looking at some incremental improvements in the budget. Again, this year, as we have the opportunity to build as opposed to decreasing our budget. So I want to thank the mayor for his bottom line, the school committee certainly for their leadership, and I want to thank you in advance for your consideration and your time this evening. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Moore.
On the second page, just want to give a quick highlight of what our budget is before you. The Superintendent's Leadership Committee budget for fiscal year 2017 and was presented to the school committee and is for $102,598,022. This represents a $3,338,300 increase from the fiscal year 2016 budget, with funding coming from two sources. One, there's appropriation, which is before you for $98,748,022, a 3.3% increase over the prior year's appropriation. In addition to that, we have circuit breaker funding, which is a reimbursement from the state for special education expenditures, which is added to our budget by law and subtracted out. So that's $3,850,000, or an increase of $178,000 over the prior year. So what we did when we looked at the budget, we looked at the prior year's budget. We then added in our negotiated increases and some anticipated increases for salaries, and that totaled $3,160,300. We're projecting an increase of $178,000 in tuitions, and that's the same amount that we're increasing the circuit breaker. So all told, we need $102,598,022 for a level service budget. Once we subtract out the $3,850,000 from circuit breaker, in addition, we look at our break. We have 9 retirements this year. The teaching staff, we're anticipating $342,000 in savings in that line item. So if we subtract those out, we need an appropriation of $98,406,022. The appropriation from the city, Quincy, is $98,748,022. So that's in addition to $342,000 we have to work to add our budget to. You notice that's the same amount of money for the breakage, so we know it's maintain the breakage, salary savings, build our budget this year. So what we'll be able to do with that money is to meet all our contractual obligations for the 2016-2017 school year, provide $178,000 for increased tuitions, and $342,000 to directly address class size, academic programs, support academic expenses, and non-academic expenses.
The budget process is not similar to what the councils have heard before, or to new councilors. This is the budget process that we've been working on since 2003, looking at involving so much of the internal pieces or aspects of the Quincy Public Schools. So what we first do is identify areas of consideration, working with the principals and the superintendent's leadership team, and then go through the process of reviewing and organizing options that we have after getting the bottom line from their code to address possible areas of impact. The leadership team works with the principals and begins their work, our work, in taking a look at options within that bottom line. So then we prioritize and kind of whittle it down. We prioritize areas to increase, to shift, and to reduce. And we did that again this year. Determine the impact in the budget area lines, and I'll go through what the important, what the focus is initially for our budget presentations. The options we present to the Quincy School Committee, in subcommittee, then in full committee. So that work begins with the school committee. At that point, I need to introduce the budget chair, and Lebo also is here, and appreciate the work that she's done on this budget as well. And then we rework the options, constantly taking a look at what is best, getting opinions from a lot of different internal and external sources as well. So then we act on the options with the Quincy School Committee, and then we present an approved budget to the Quincy City Council. That's what we normally do. This body is meeting earlier than we're used to doing that. But so we're presenting to you. We have a public hearing on the budget on June 1st at 6 o'clock at Coddington, and then we have our last meeting on June 15th, the last school committee meeting, and that's when the school committee will vote on the budget at that time. So with that, the next slide that you have, page 6, is the real focus, and I think, when people talk about transparency in the budget, this really shows, what our priorities are. So that center, we're increasing, or we're building a budget again this year. So when we build, we come from that center, and the most important part of everything that we do in the Quincy Public Schools, and that's our students, and very close to those students are the academic classroom teachers. The school committee, again this year, has really focused on class size. Really high quality class size from pre-K to our seniors. And that's something that the school committee has really shepherded for quite a long period of time. So you go from your academic classroom teachers and say, do we have the quality class size? Yes, we do. And then we go on to academic programs. So many of our programs that we've enhanced consistently over the past 4 or 5 years, going to academic support, providing leadership and guidance specialists with academic support, non-academic support, and then we go to our subsidized programs, which Jim will just share with you a bit on that, and then we go to our expenses, academic expenses and non-academic expenses. So we're building from inside out. If we're decreasing the budget, we're going from outside in to protect that academic classroom size, the academic program that we're so proud of, and you've been incredibly supportive of.
So, following that chart, we look at the academic classroom teachers. Page 7, we're increasing the classroom teachers' staff by 1 full-time equivalent in elementary school with class size needs. We're increasing a 1.0 FTE for Quincy High School for foreign language. So in total, that's $104,000 of new money. And we're going to have contractual raises of $1,358,990. For total increasing that with $1,462,990. The next page, academic programs, we're adding a 0.5 ELL teacher to address student needs at Quincy High School, that's English language learners, a 0.5 literacy teacher at the elementary level. We're increasing occupational education by 1 full-time equivalent. It's going to be a 0.5 FTE for a new broadcasting program at Quincy High School, and a 0.5 for a new design and visual communications program, also at Quincy High School. And we're increasing special education teachers 2.8 FTEs to address student needs there. That's in addition to wonderful $9,600, along with contractual obligations of $879,796. In academic support, we're just making a few changes in some of the line items, but there's no effect on new money in the budget. So we're looking at $310,227 of contractual increases. Non-academic support, we're not having any major changes, any changes also. We're looking at contractual raises of $269,287,000. In academic expenses, we're increasing in special education tuition, which I mentioned before, thanks to circuit breaker funding of $178,000. We're increasing occupational education supplies by $30,000, providing an increase for teacher professional discretionary reimbursement, $37,000, increasing software funding of $25,000, and we're decreasing funding of technology acquisitions by $16,600. So a total increase in that line item is $253,400. In non-academic expenses, we're shifting fuel in the Burns Army School from fuel oil to natural gas. That building was changed over to natural gas this year, prior year. We're decreasing funding for electricity by $50,000, decreasing funding for gasoline by $37,000, so there's a total decrease of $87,000 in that line item. As Rick mentioned, the subsidized services, under 4 main revolving accounts, we have food services to provide breakfast and lunch for our children, school building rentals, transportation, and athletics, and there are fees associated with all those. The school committee at the current time is not recommending any changes in the fee structure. So on page 14, you see a breakdown of the additional funding for the academic classroom teachers, all the way to non-academic expenses, total new money, as well as the total money including the raises. We have 2 academic classroom teachers, 3.8 new academic programs, a reduction of 13 in academic support. But what that is a change in funding. These people are being funded by a grant now, so it was moved out, and that money was taken out of our budget last year for that purpose anyway. The increase in academic expenses, decrease in non-academic expenses, so that's the increase of $520,000 of new money, $3,338,300 in total. And the final page, just go back to that chart that Dr. Chris follows religiously, and you see that we try to have most of the money affected in the areas where it's closest to the students. We look at academic teachers, increase of 20%, the total new funding, academic programs 48%, increase in academic expenses 48.73%, and a decrease in non-academic expenses of 16.73%.
Questions? I again want to thank the school committee for their hard work. And if there are any questions you may have.
No, I was going to make a motion to pass the budget.
On the motion, Councilman Clark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the superintendent, I want to personally thank you. You came down for a meeting up in our school with myself and some of the parents for the fourth incoming fourth graders. And I just want to talk about the creative options that you came up with. Has that matter been resolved?
Was it
So it was a potential merger. It was a really small class size. They talked about a merger. We talked about maintaining small class size in the mornings. I guess for the afternoon, we talked about maintaining a small class size in the morning and grouping them together for the extracurricular, for gym and art and music, some of non-academic.
Right.
So
And then
how did that?
adding some additional math support to grades 3 and 5, because we're talking about projected 4. So I talked to 2 or 3 parents on Saturday actually, and they were very happy with the program that it is. And they're also, I think they're very satisfied in regard to reflecting, talking about it, whether it's October 1, whether it's November 1, or whatever, for me to come down and talk about the programs that's working for the children.
I think it was important to recognize the additional need for math help. We talked about the individual potential of those students meet some of the IEPs and how you're able to move players in the school so we are maintaining the full-time equivalent. So I do appreciate that. I appreciate the open dialogue. I guess for us, it's difficult sometimes when you guys have put so much effort in. We want to thank the school committee for being here. But for us to get this packet, there's a lot of, I'd probably like to really drill through before tonight. But I respect that you've done a lot of this vetting. Although on page 1, I gotta tell you, my favorite alma mater, Broad Meadows, is the only school to have a decrease in these. And I'm thinking, did they lose teachers there? What was the, not some of the long-term retiring younger teachers coming on. I just thought, it kind of jumped out at me. It's the only school budget from the teacher rate
The
that
staff
it's
stays the
decreased.
same, but it's just that, we identify the actual teachers who are in them. In previous years, when we look at the increases, we have to spread certain, we break them out, we don't know really where all that's coming from. So we make adjustments for that and raise it, so. But
Well, I
it
know
hasn't been done.
that the number wouldn't alone account for it, but I was hoping that my favorite teacher is not retiring.
No comments.
No comments. All right, well, listen, thank you very much for all of your efforts. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor DeBon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Christopher, for coming up here today, and as well as Jim Mulaney, as well as Kevin Mulvey over there. Thank you for all your hard work. I want to thank the school committee members as well, Paul Bavoli, Vice Chair, Emily Nebo that just came in right now, and Albert Zola. Thank you for all your hard work up there, and the school committee as well. 3.16 is a good amount. I know that most of the allocation is towards the teachers, their salaries, one on the back end and 2 on the front end here, going to that, and that most of the allocation. With the circuit breaker, it brings us up to 102.6, which is pretty good, it's pretty reasonable. We're going in the right direction, we're not making cuts, which is great, right? Some of those days? Sure. But, I just, a testament to Dr. Christopher, and people don't know this, is how hard he works. There's been many times where I've met with you on Sundays, and I still go by Coddington Hall, and I see you still out there on the weekends doing hard work for the city and for the kids. I want to thank you for all that, and it's really, I see it, and I've worked hand in hand with you. Thank you. I'm looking at some of these items, and I'm just thinking about, how much we've restored over the years. How many, when you lose funding or grant money for kindergarten aides, which you have 14 that you're going to be able to decrease because of grant money that's coming back. Is that correct? And that's huge, because they're always trying to cut from the state or the grant money, and you're trying to balance off where do we push this and where do we put that in. Also, I see 2.8 on the special needs department for teachers, which is a huge push and help for those special needs kids. I want to thank you for that, putting that together. I know you're the numbers guy, Mr. Mulaney, and just trying to balance everything out and pushing everything. I know Mr. Bugroli over there, the athletics, I hope that the athletics is still very strong over at the Quincy Public Schools, and how important our parks and recreation work hand in hand with you, as well as Mr. Drapio with the traffic and the security purposes. The question I had is, I know you have 9 retirees, and I want to thank all those 9 teachers that put all their time and effort into the Quincy Public Schools over the years, and I wish them well on their next thing. Do we anticipate any more retirees that haven't?
As of current, no, it's not notified.
No one's going to slide one in the last month? Not yet, okay. But I thank you for everything. I don't want to take away from Mayor Koch and the administration, but in this capital improvement plan, we also have a $1.3 million, which I'm going to be very supportive for computers, smart boards, and related technology. So I know, I wish I could give you more than the 3.6, but maybe we can hit you up and help you out on this end and give you new technology, which is very important for the kids. And the number one agenda for Quincy Public Schools, or anything that we do, is academic achievement. Trying to get the best out of the kids and what we can do. And I'm up here and being with you guys the last 2 years. I'm going to continue to push for funding for special needs, disabilities, traffic concerns, sidewalk repairs for these areas around the schools. I want to thank you for all your hard work tonight. I'm going to be approving this, and thank you.
Thank you, Councilor DeBon. Councilor Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to just piggyback on what my colleague just said. Thank you for your hard work, budget, school committee. Thank you. I love seeing the North Quincy High School getting a new broadcasting program. That's fantastic. You better be ready for that school to have a classroom-sized product, because I took a tour just before the meeting of the new field as it's progressing. I got to tell you something. That campus is going to be something else for the people of North Quincy. Thank you to my colleagues who passed that, and thank you to the mayor, and thank you to all of you. It's going to be fantastic. I can't wait to see it. It's going to happen, as I was told today, all of a sudden the field is going to, those mounds are going to go down and it's going to appear, and it's going to be great. North Quincy High School is going to be fantastic. Thank you to everybody. Thanks so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Council Calhoun.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Apologize for being a little late. I'll echo the sentiments. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here, and the school committee members for attending. Certainly one of our, I think, our best strengths as a community is a high quality of our public school system. So kudos to all of you. Keep up the good work. Rick, I want to ask you what I ask you every time I see you publicly and every time I see you privately. How are we doing with Sterling? Where are we at?
We're doing great. We have a building committee scheduled for, I believe, next week. And they've done additional borings around the school, which have all turned out to be great, so there's not a ledge in a sense. So, no, we're moving very quickly, very quickly.
And we're moving along with the plan that was presented at the community meeting.
That is correct. That's correct, yeah. And then we'll go over any of the changes in schedule. We'll go over the building committee meeting. We'll get you the notes for those immediately, and then we'll see where we're going. See you, Council Pro, as well. Didn't forget. So we can do that. We're doing really good.
And what's our break ground timeline? Do we have one?
I don't think they're really, shortly saying a certain time, but I think we're talking about 18 anyway, so it could be November, September, October, November, or 18.
Well, terrific. Keep up the good work. Thank you all.
Thanks for help.
Council, any further discussion on the motion? Gentlemen, I just, again, wanted to note your professionalism. You guys are good at what you do, but you're also approachable guys to help us who may not be involved with the day-to-day to understand it, which I know it is a tremendous amount of work. And to my colleagues in the school committee, thank you for your service. I think investments, progressive investments in education, specifically as we continue to forecast Quincy's bright future, which I do believe it is bright, and taking into consideration this new demographic of folks that we want to attract to our cities. I just think it is so imperative that we continue to invest in education, because if we're going to get those folks to come to our city and they have younger families, one of the first things they go in and look at is the quality of the school system. So, I appreciate what you're doing. There's no words up there that could give that justice. So there's a motion on the floor and we'll pass it on the budget. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Thank you all very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, gentlemen. Okay, folks. Next item on the agenda is the animal control that can be found in section 2 on page 32, in section 3 on page 6. Welcome, Mr. Conway.
Thank you,
How are you this
Councilor.
evening?
The budget is basically level funded, the only increase is out of contract.
Move approval on the motion. Council Forrest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Unfortunately, well, John, thank you for being here. Unfortunately, your department's one that I feel the most complaints from, and you and I have a lot of dialogue. I guess what I'm looking for is, what is it, how do you feel things are, I guess, doing in my area while I have it here?
I think it's improved quite a bit. We're making a lot of swings through your area. We deal with every single complaint that comes out of there. And unfortunately, a lot of them are anonymous, so we have to use kid gloves on them. But we respond to every complaint.
And so, why do you think that is, that people are complaining anonymous? Because I feel like...
Because
what,
they're, sorry.
Go ahead.
Because they were afraid to have a confrontation with the neighbor over an animal, where they have confrontations about other things, and they just don't want to get involved.
And I feel it's a little bit of a broken record. There I go again, same dog, same problem, same barking, Groundhog's Day, repeat the cycle. And so if you're that neighbor that everybody knows, here's this chronic dog, whether it's the office dog living in the neighborhood, whether it's the dog that just won't stop barking, it's the same problems. And so I guess I'm looking for, how are we going to get resolutions? It's a handful, particularly, there are examining, a handful of dogs, chronic problems, same dog, same owner, same problem. But the frustration for those immediate neighbors, right, the Crusher neighborhood has had a ton, that complaints are flaring up. I have one I received just near Quincy, but I just received a letter on the follow-up if you want. It's like same dog, different day, same problem, chronic areas. And I guess I'm looking for what outreach on some of these chronic dogs. What's your process that you are seeing resolution, your tracking methods? How are you tracking these matters?
Well, we know the people call, we write it in our logbook, we know which houses they are.
So you write a logbook with paper and pencil?
Yep.
Paper and pencil. You do know it's 2016. Have you looked at any other communities and understood how they operate their animal control departments?
No.
No. That's what I'm looking for, some ingenuity, so do your job. What better tools do you need to do your job? So for example, the Quincy Police Department fields a lot of your calls. They have a tracking system.
They're actually preparing to install something on our computer. I don't know if it's going to be the same as the other, it's going to be a simpler thing, I guess.
Because I think the days of paper and pen logs died like your tape machine you used to have. It's time to bring animal control into 2016, utilize some technology. So when I, as a board counselor, call you and say, here we go again, Rhoda Street, what is happening at whatever number Rhoda Street chronic complaints are coming from? Or, you know, when we talk about when the police comes out about, you know, kind of the area stats, you can pull up and say, Jesus, a high volume of calls in this area. What's the problem? How do I tackle it? And like J2 in the blight issue. Chronic blight problems aren't going away very easily, but we've got to put the effort in and work on them. And if that's where the complaints are coming in, that's what needs the attention. So I'm very frustrated with what's happening with your department, and my constituents are feeling, I'm hearing the same rounds of complaints. Hey, I'm calling, I'm not getting a response. What if they call you and it's 3 days later because no one played the machine or whatever it may be? Everyone needs that call back. And that's the business of government they're in. They need to have their problems heard, and they need you to understand as animal control who's responsible for, you know, enforcing the noise ordinance and enforcing the off-leash dogs, that their problem matters and you'll work towards resolution. I'm glad to partner with you on that, and I really, in particular, want to see some technology in animal control. And I just feel there's a better way, and I'm looking forward to for the administration to come up with an answer and a solution so that you have trackability by these dogs, whether they're licensed. I mean, if you have to go, come on up to the city hall to see if your dog has a license.
Yep.
I want that on your tablet. If your business is on the road, let's give you the tools to have on the road, not I need to go check the machine on Broad Street. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Council.
If I just want to say that the police department is working on that, and those complaints you're saying, those are past complaints. We've been working on those, and you're going back a couple of years.
Oh, no, they keep coming in.
Yeah, but we've been working on them, so I mean, you're saying the call is 3 days, that's not true.
Okay.
All set, Council?
Yes.
Council King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Conway, I don't believe we've had the pleasure of actually communicating before, but nice to see you. We don't have any dog complaints on Ward 3, so I'm sorry for your issue, Margaret, but I have had a couple of interesting things come up recently. Today I was just made aware of the fact that we have a growing rooster in Ward 3. And it's now that the sun is rising earlier, it's waking constituents up earlier. So what I said was, I don't know how we would survive an agrarian economy or society, given that nobody actually farms their own food these days or takes care of chickens, but what are we doing about such things as roosters?
Unfortunately, about 4 years ago, the zoning board decided to allow farm animals back in the city when we weren't allowing. So it comes under the code enforcement.
Okay.
We've been trying to track that rooster down. They told us where it lived, and it does not live at that house.
It doesn't.
No, not the house, they told us.
All right.
So we're trying to find out.
Well, I know we have our community police officer on it also, and I don't necessarily know if that's falls under the purview of QPD, but I'm glad that some efforts are being
We also
made.
have a 300-pound spot belly pig living in that area too.
Good to know. So the Ward 3 annual pig roast will start this year. that's come up that's kind of serious, and like, I hope you could sort of address it for the general public, is coyotes. I've had a couple of complaints up near Cranch Street, up by kind of the High Point wooded area back there. And what can residents do about that, or how can we
You
engage
just
it?
have to protect the small cats and dogs. You have to be aware that they're there. The environmental police are the ones that deal with them. They only deal with them if they're sick or injured. And coyotes and foxes and deer are out during the day. It's not like the other animals that are nocturnal. Although this time of year, because wild animals are in a family way, they can be out any time of day.
Okay. So basically, what's the advice for people that
We
have?
give them a handout, so if they call us, we'll drop the handout at their house. You don't want to keep the garbage covered, bird feeders, you want to clean up under them, stuff like that.
Sounds familiar. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions from Mr. Conboy this evening? I got one point, Mr. Conboy. Just before we move on this, I'm just kind of curious because the dialogue, it seems to me, has sort of broadened from a counselor, a board counselor standpoint around rodent control. And I know that Mr. Shealy and his department does everything they possibly can to mitigate that issue. If you could, maybe talk to me, maybe there is no dialogue, but is there any overlap between what you do and what he does? And is there a way to kind of maximize issues?
We don't do rodents only because we have to trap them and put them down. We don't have that capability.
So that's exclusively on his umbrella?
Yeah, we usually set traps. They usually put traps in the burrows and that. But that's the same thing about covering all your garbage and stuff like that. And bird feed, same thing, cleaning it up under that.
Understood. Any further discussion on the motion? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
No.
Opposed? Ayes have it. No? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Conboy.
Thank you, Council.
Okay, next up is the Chief of the Quincy Police Department. Welcome here this evening, Chief Keenan. The floor is yours.
Good evening, councilors. It's a tough act to follow. I provided you with Chris Walker's passing out just a little update on where we stand with various crimes that have occurred in the city. Part 1 crimes, essentially the crime has been stagnant for the most part, or static. We haven't seen any real spikes in any of the categories or any of the declines from the previous several years. I think we're in pretty good shape as far as the criminal activity that occurs in the city. I think we have a pretty good handle on it, and if you look through, I'll be glad to answer any questions, but I think the numbers kind of speak for themselves. They're mostly flat. As far as calls for service, last year that also was about flat. We did 55,883 calls for service. We made, on criminal cases, 1,852 arrests. That's not including our protective custodies. As far as I know one of the issues that's always a question is the pedestrian accidents. In 2015, we had 69 pedestrian accidents, which is consistent with 2014 and 13 and 70 and 74. We had, so far in 2016, we've had 3 fatal pedestrian accidents. There was one on Quincy Avenue where a cab ran over the occupant of the cab after he had gotten out. There was one down in Wallaston Center where an elderly gentleman was struck by a truck that was backing out of a parking space. And then there was a gentleman that was crossing the street in front of the Fennel House on Hancock Street that was struck and killed. In light of that, we've increased our selective enforcement tenfold. We're out there, Christine Hurton, who is our grant writer, has secured grants for pedestrian safety and crosswalk safety. We're out almost on a daily basis educating the public as well as citing the public, usually with a warning to get them to comply with pedestrian safety laws as well as safe driving laws. And I think that's made somewhat of a significant impact over the last several years. Most of the other calls are down in most other categories, so I think we're heading always in the right direction. As far as the department goes, we're looking at basically, I'll get in the budget in a bit if you indulge me, but we're keeping the staffing levels essentially the same. We have 1 chief 4 captains, 14 lieutenants, 30 sergeants, and we're budgeted for 161 patrol officers in the upcoming budget. We presently have 159 patrol officers. We were up to 160, and one of the candidates that we just hired went back to New Jersey and dropped out of the police academy, so that set us back a little bit. We are holding a position for a veteran that's still active. We'll be going through the process. I anticipate 2 further openings in the next fiscal year. 2 lieutenants I anticipate are going to retire. One I know has to, he'll age out at age 65. The other one, Lieutenant Sawyer, is our community police lieutenant, has indicated to me that he may be retiring in December. So I'll be looking to fill those positions as well. We have in total 74 civilians. We've got 16 dispatchers, an IT person, a secretary in the chief's office, 3 payroll clerks, essentially that do budgeting and payroll, 2 mechanics, 6 people in the records room that assist people when they come in with records requests and that type of thing, court processing. We've got 44 crossing guards as well that we put out in the street on a part-time basis. As far as this year's budget, I anticipate that I will be on budget. I don't anticipate going over. I should be as close as possibly I can to coming on an even budget. We do have some things coming up in the next month. May and June are usually historically very busy months for us. We have the Flag Day Parade, we have the Memorial Day Parade, we have an increase in officers on the street generally at this time of year. So I do anticipate, though, that I won't be back to ask for any further funding, of course, and I anticipate coming on budget, as far as next year goes, the 2017 budget has been prepared by the mayor, and I thank him for his efforts as well as his office staff. The only increases that we really are looking for in the budget is some extra training money. We've increased the training time. We put $238,000 as a request in the overtime budget. And also a slight increase of, I believe it's $82,000 in the training budget. An extra $82,000 in the training budget. So that will bring us up to about $570,000. And the reason that I'm asking for these increases, and the mayor's opted to put those in, is we haven't had a training budget essentially for several years. Back in 2008, 2009, that was one of the areas that we were forced to cut or meant layoffs. Slowly but surely, we've been trying to build that budget back up. As far as state requirements, we're required to provide 40 hours of training to every officer, from the chief on down to the newest patrol officer. And to do that, we have to pay the officers on overtime to go to those trainings. Not me, unfortunately, but those officers go to training, and they're required by contract to provide them with overtime to do that training. We do an extensive amount of training in the Quincy Police Department. I think it's very, very important in this day and age. It's vital, actually. We do our 40 hours of training. We're also required to provide certifications and upgraded training for the accident recon officers, SWAT team. The detectives require specialized training in interview and interrogation techniques and eyewitness identification techniques. Drug recognition, we have a drug recognition expert. We're actually one of the few in this region that do have a drug recognition expert who requires training. He sometimes goes out to other area departments if they have someone that they suspect is involved in an accident or a fatal accident or that type of thing, a serious accident that involves narcotics. I think that's, in light of the marijuana issues that we're facing, I think that's the way of the future. We are actually looking to train a couple more officers. They'll be going to school shortly. Those classes are very difficult to obtain because there aren't that many of them around. So please say we do have a DRE, drug recognition expert. We have breathalyzer operators we have to train. We have to train all of our officers that work inside in suicide prevention. And we also train our dispatchers. We do 16 hours of training, mandatory 16 hours a year of training for all of our dispatchers. But on top of that, we also train them on legal updates, CPR, first aid, and that type of thing. Some of that money, the 16 hours, is paid by grants. Christine Hertman from our grant department, who oversees our grants. She gets the grants every year for 16 hours for that mandatory training. We also are required to keep our certifications up on our canine officers or our canine dogs. And usually it's the officers being the training of the dog, but they're required to be kept up. So we have to, those are some of the training needs that we do have, and that's why I've asked for that increase. Presently, to date, we spent $595,000 in fiscal year 16 to train our officers. How I got that was took my training budget and then whatever breakage I had in any other lines, I tried to combine it to try and get those officers as many hours as I can in training. We're also required every year to provide training for our firearms. We do that out of the Boston Police Range, and then we train long rifles, patrol rifles down at the Hanover Police Range. They have a range down in the town of Hanover that they allow us to use. So those are some of the training needs that we have as far as, so that's mostly what the increases that I've asked for. Any of the other increases are just the 1% and the 2% that the mayor's staff is negotiating with all of the unions. So I think that's pretty much the update. We've got a lot of exciting things going as well. We're very active now in social media. We have a Facebook page that has about 7,000 or 8,000 followers. We've got a Twitter feed that has about 9,600 followers. We reach out to all of our constituents in our neighborhoods with Nextdoor, and I think it's pretty much almost every neighborhood in the city. We are active with that. So those are some of the things we've done. Also, we have 3 advocates that work in community police mode to reach out to the citizens to provide them with some services. We have a domestic violence advocate that we share on a grant with the town of Randolph. We also have a embedded social clinician. She's through social and mental health, again on a grant. She works directly out of the police station. She'll respond right to incidents where people are having mental health issues, and she expedites the process to get them needed treatment or needed beds. We also, I'm pleased to announce, just partnered with Health Imperatives, which is a social service organization, and they're providing us with a rape counselor that works out of the police station too. So we're kind of expanding more from just a law enforcement role to more of a social service role as well. So those are some of the kind of the highlights, I think. That's essentially what I have as far as requests for budget. There are no new personnel. The personnel that we had last year are the same as we're going to go forward with this year. And I'd be glad to take any questions.
Councilor Forrest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, Chief Kin. Chief, I just want to thank you and your staff. You're always so well responsive. I feel like I'm a frequent flyer up at 1 C Street with so a lot of things happening in the area. My community police officer came to a neighborhood meeting for me last week. He gave a great presentation. And one of the things I think your department's done phenomenal in the last year is the launch of your new website, so it's quincypolice.org. You gave us some terrific stats about, for example, B&E's 2014, 410, 2015, 379. You've seen what your crime stats are doing. I think it's really terrific that you have the opportunity for this new technology to log on, look at your area, look at your neighborhood, and drill down on what's happening over the timeline. So your department's providing real-time data on the majority of what is happening in the city. I think there's some things that don't get propagated, but I just really think you're doing a great job. We have a very safe city for the size of our city and what we're dealing with. They're doing a terrific job, and anybody can log on at any time to see what's happening in their neighborhood. So I encourage people to visit your website. I think there's an anonymous tip line for that. The social media presence that the detectives been working on has been terrific messaging, appreciated by my constituents. So I really just want to say thank you for all of that. The other thing, I guess, in the budget is coming more in the capital improvement plan. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about just briefly the conditions of your station, because as you talk about your budget and level funding, increasing staff, and how you're able to leverage so much through grant funding, I had taken my godson, as you know, on that Nooks and Crannies tour on 1 C Street. And it's bad. It's bad. So I didn't see any other capital improvements for you in that plan. I just didn't know if there's anything else we're talking about. It seems we've replaced a lot of the cruisers and brought a lot of the other capital things up to speed, but just was curious where we stand on that from your perspective.
Well, two things. As far as the social media and that type of thing, we put a detective named Detective Karen Barkas who's doing an amazing job. I get positive feedback from the whole city on the information that she provides. What we're looking to do is be as transparent as we can with all the statistics, but we also want to give live updates. And I know everybody seems to follow Twitter these days, so anytime we can get information out in a timely manner, it's been very, very helpful as far as getting information for road closures, fires, detours, things like that we need to do. Plus, we're also taking an active role in fundraising as well and putting positive things out. We raised some money for a school for autism. We raised money for cancer through the social media campaign and that type of thing. As far as the capital improvement plan, I hope that the cruisers were still in there, they didn't hit the bedroom floor. And I've also requested some funding through the mayor's office for a new police wagon. The wagon that we have is probably 15 years old. It was a hand-me-down, I believe, either through Mike Bellotti at the sheriff's office or PDU, so it wasn't even due to us. In this day and age, I think we need some modern technology as far as transporting prisoners for even more transparency and that type of thing in the vehicle. I did ask for some cruises. I don't know what the status of that is, but I'm sure I'll find out at some point. As far as the capital improvement plan on the station goes, we've been doing a lot through the past few years. Well, actually since the station since it opened. We've had issues with roofs, with leaks. This past year we had a nor'easter and it took down half of the special investigations unit, ruined computers, ruined desks, there were ceiling tiles falling in. As far as downstairs in the basement, the master control room or the master electrical room, the beams are all rotted above it. We've got mold issues, mildew issues. We try and keep it up as best we can. The janitors do a good job as much as they can do, but the building is just dated and it's really aged and it's really ineffective. We've outgrown it. We have people that are in closets, people that are offices that were actually initially designed to be closets. I think, the time is good to build a new police station in light of all the bonding and the financing. Well, I'm not a finance major, but I know that interest rates are still fairly low, so I think it's a good time to borrow and to build for capital improvement for the future. As far as that whole footprint, I know the mayor had a conversation with me about looking into that footprint and doing something different in the area where the police station is now, reconfiguring the intersections, perhaps putting a public safety fire police building. I know the fire stations, I've been on a number of those, and most of those are in deplorable condition as well, so I think it would be a benefit to that area. I think we can do some nice things in the footprint that we have, and I hope at some point that if it comes up for a vote, that we support it.
So it wasn't under public safety, you're in there, you're under equipment, marked cruises on marked cruises, prisoner transport vehicles.
Oh.
You're still pictures in there and everything.
Good,
So, no, thank you very much. And as far as staffing levels, it sounds like we're holding a vacancy, we're at 161, you're anticipating 2 more. Are you comfortable where your staffing levels are? I know that same thing when, we're kind of, or where your goal, I think last year and I had talked, it was almost closer to the 180 mark is your ideal want. I'm curious.
I think we're in good shape. When I first took over as chief, I think we were down 142 patrol officers. We're presently funded for 161, and I hope to fill those 2 positions with academy openings in September. We have some seats reserved at the Transit Academy behind the police station. I think as the city grows, we may have to look at potentially expanding the size of the Quincy Police Department. We have a number of new developments. As you can see, the city, there is in the corner that there is some development, and it's fantastic. And I think that once the city, the downtown area is even more heavily populated, I know the West of Chestnut just opened. I went through a tour of that with one of the developers. They have new people in there now. I think that as the city continues to grow, I think we probably should have to look, we probably should look at expanding the police department to some level.
Great.
But I do feel comfortable with what we have today. I think we're in decent shape.
All set, Council Brown? Palmucci.
Thank you.
Brian Palmucci, full intro.
Hi, Brad. Thank you, Chief, for being here. I have a potpourri of questions for you. Nothing too deep, just go across the surface on a bunch of things. You have 2 unions, right?
Correct. Well, actually, police unions, yes, we have 2 police unions, but
Right.
we've got civilian unions as well.
So where are we in contract status with those unions?
As far as,
When are the contracts up?
the contracts were up, they expired last July. So they're 1 year, almost a year out.
Okay. Are we in a new contract, or are they going?
No, the contracts are still being negotiated through the mayor's office with both unions, actually, and I believe the civilian union as well. I don't know the progress of that, I'm not privy to that.
Okay. Perhaps through you, the mayor's representative, obviously the negotiations are relatively limited in what you can speak to, but where are we in terms of, you feel we're getting close to conclusion there?
I don't want to speak, Councilor, you're right, I agree with Mr. Chairman, to the substance of any negotiations, other than say that both the city and the unions are at the table. There's open discussion, and there are issues going back and forth, and progress is being made. I think I would just leave it at that, just because I don't want to temper anything.
Who's handling those negotiations?
Those are done through the Department of Human Resources.
Do we have outside counsel, or is it?
We do have outside counsel that does assist us in that process.
All right, thank you. The reason why I asked you is I just, when we're here obviously forecasting something that I would imagine that the contracts are going to close, come to terms this fiscal year. So you took a bit of a bold step by saying, I don't think I'm going to come back to you for any more money. But, I mean, if the contracts don't settle at what we're assuming they'll settle at what's built into your budget, there was some breakage there. And that's just why I was asking in terms of predicting what the cost would be. Last year, we talked a bit about what the city can do in terms of what the police department can do, what the city can do in terms of the opiate crisis. And we had discussed, you and I had discussed, I think it was at a public safety hearing or something of that, about how there isn't a lot of cooperation between the police department and the Quincy Medical Center in terms of, we remember, maybe 2 years ago, we walked through the life cycle of somebody who was Narcan, so we walked, you were here, Judge Kovner was here, I think there was someone from Stewart or Quincy Medical who was here, and we kind of walked through what happens, what are the services available to someone. Police, fire get the call, they get hit with the Narcan, they go in the ambulance, they go to Quincy Medical Center, and then I think the conclusion that we came across at that point in those hearings was then they're just sent home. Then the door opens at Quincy Medical Center and they're back on the street. There's no real life cycle follow-up. There's no services that are really pushed at that point are provided to somebody. And obviously that's not Quincy Police Department's job. Your job is to prevent crime and transport people as necessary in that vein. But have you seen any greater cooperation with Quincy Medical? And I know obviously they're in flux. And
Well, not necessarily Quincy Medical per se, but I know that through the state there's been legislation that's been implemented. I don't know the status of it exactly where it stands or when the implementation dates. The Good Samaritan laws that were passed in 2012, now they've gotten to the point where they're looking at an opiate overdose with a Narcan refusal as like a protective custody issue where you take them to the hospital and they have the right to hold you. And I don't know the exact hours. I know we'll be entering it back and forth in the legislature, how long they can hold you, and then make treatment beds available. So I think they're pushing in the right direction. I think the state not finally, but the state is out in front of this as well. And they're making some good strides. They're writing good legislation to keep this going forward and looking for creative solutions as to try and curb the stem of this crisis.
And I think actually your brother, Senator Keenan, was...
I don't want to say that.
Yeah, right.
He's been on the forefront.
Yeah, he has been on the forefront of this, and I know he's been a strong advocate up on Beacon Hill. We're certainly lucky to have him, and the rest of the state's lucky we send him up there to be our representative because he's really...
I know it's near and dear to him.
Yeah, I mean, he's got that big brain, and he really puts it to good use up there. One of the concerns that I hear quite frequently, and in fact I've come across myself, is the increase in the number of needles found in places you really do not find needles. I mean, I've taken my daughter, who's 3, to the playground in O'Rourke and had to pick up a needle right there in them. Why anyone using heroin would shoot up in a play structure and leave the needle is beyond me, but I suppose I don't really identify with why you would shoot that up.
And it's part of the illness. Unfortunately, we see it citywide. Our offices do have shops, containers in the cruises. We do respond. We will pick up needles when we're called. Unfortunately, needles, I think they're about 50 cents a piece now. I think the technology probably needs to be upgraded where they retract so that they're not as big a hazard. But it definitely is a problem. It's not just for Quincy. I know that. I see in the paper, I was watching the news sometimes that a lot of communities are dealing with this. So it's not unique to us. We do the best we can if we're ever called. We do respond. We will remove the needle. I know the DPW gets them once in a while. They get calls for them as well. We have the shops containers that we try and keep up with it, but it is a problem, there's no question.
So, I mean, if someone finds a needle, if you see a needle at a playground or wherever on the side of the street, unfortunately they use them and then just throw them out the window. They can call the Quincy Police Department. Someone's equipped to come out and get them.
Yes.
And I think one of the issues is, heard something recently on the radio about it, is how, the state, we essentially legalize possession of a needle, so you don't have to have a
That's
prescription
correct.
for a needle. And it's done wonders in terms of public health for addicts, which is what the point of it was. But the unintended consequence is needles are more readily available. It's not legal to be in possession of the needles, so there are more people in possession of them at any given time, and that the unintended consequence is that they're being discarded in a haphazard way.
It's not just that, sometimes it puts our offices at risk as well, which is always a concern. Our offices, the majority of them have what are called frisk gloves, and they're penetration-proof gloves essentially, so if they have to search a car, search a human being, search wherever, they don't have to put their hands into something that they can't view.
Right.
So it's definitely a concern.
Now, our current fiscal year, I know in the past, our Narcan supply has been funded by a DPH grant, with the pilot program for that. We're continuing to be funded by DPH.
We received a grant, I think the amount was $15,000. We have a supply on hand for about 4 more months. If we continue to use it at the rate that we have historically. And after the 4 months, when the recent contract was negotiated with the new ambulance provider, Booster Ambulance, part of what was negotiated in that is they will resupply us with Narcan. So going forward, we should have a supply of Narcan. So it should not be an issue. The city won't have to bear the cost of that as well.
Because it's relatively expensive.
It's getting more expensive, yeah.
Especially the more you use it, the more in demand, more municipalities and
Unfortunately, yes.
governments using it. Our drug unit, what's our current capacity? What's the drug unit?
The number?
Yeah.
We have 8 and a sergeant, and then we have 2 officers assigned to DEA. 2 of our detectives are assigned to DEA. We've also reinvigorated the South Shore Task Force. The South Shore Task Force is a combination of the Quincy Police, the Braintree Police, the Weymouth Police, the Randolph Police, and if I'm not mistaken, maybe Holbrook Police. And what that does is that increases their resources with our offices and our resources with their offices. If there's a situation where we need more help, like an on-deck, all-hands-on-deck situation, they can put the all-call out. If we have a situation where our detectives have been burnt in an area or whatever, we can bring in a fresh face from another community. So we've reinvigorated that task force under Lieutenant Glenn. That's something we just actually signed off on. The mayors have all signed, and town solicitors have all signed off on that. So that's something we've just partnered with them. So I look forward to some good things happening with them. The drug trade, as most people know, it just doesn't happen in Quincy. It goes across borders routinely from Boston down to Brockton or to Randolph or to Weymouth. A lot of the people that they're dealing with, we're seeing their people too. So it's a good source of information and a good resource. That's just one of the things that we've done. We also have a brand new drug dog that's killing it. He's excellent. Paul Foley, it's a chocolate lab dog, is amazing. He's really making some great finds. So, and there's also 2 other drug dogs that do a good job, but this dog just seems really phenomenal.
So as we're, I'm sure business isn't down, the drug unit, I mean, every time I've ever talked to anybody in that unit, they always tell me it's, they have their hands full. There's never a day where, gee, there's just nothing to do in the city.
No, if we double the unit, we just double the volume, so.
Right, so then that's my question is, what's the happy medium? Are we at it? Do we need to grow over the next couple of years? And what's kind of the equilibrium that we want to get at in terms of the drug unit?
I think that we could definitely expand the drug unit. That's an area we could always use more help in, because the more help we have, the more arrests we make. The more arrests we make, the safer the community is, because what we're looking to do is turn around wait time for these people that are looking drug seeking. If we turn around the wait time, but sometimes, unfortunately, the dealers show up, we make the arrest, we process them through the courts, whatever happens there, but the next day somebody else is in there doing their route. So we do try and keep up with it as best we can. Some of the issues, we don't normally go into bigger investigations. We would refer those to our partners in the DEA, the officers that we sent to the DEA. They now become partners with us, so they look at the bigger investigations. We try and do a lot of the quality of life issues. We always ask the citizens to assist us in that. If we have the MyPD app, they can get on their phone and send us drug tips directly, anonymously. If they can get information to us with the types of vehicles, the registration of vehicles, the times of day that people are coming and going, that's always helpful too. A lot of the times we work off of tips, and the people are very good that since we've implemented that MyPD app, we're getting a lot of tips through that app, and we follow up on whatever we can. Sometimes the leads don't go anywhere, but we usually try and follow up on as many of them as we can. But I think any city and town in the Commonwealth could use an influx of drug officers.
And the 2 officers that we send to the DEA, how does that work? They're
They-
Quincy officers, they're detailed to the DEA.
That's correct.
So they report to the DEA.
Correct.
participate in those.
They're on
Those
a
aren't
task force.
necessarily Quincy investigations.
No, there are investigations throughout the Commonwealth. They have been involved in a number of Quincy investigations, and then they bring in their resources. What it is a drug task force. They work in a different, like one of them is a pill task force, another one's a heroin task force. They go out and they'll investigate at a bigger level. We refer cases to them a lot. If they come across a case in Quincy that doesn't meet their level, they have a minimum level that they'll adopt, then they'll send it back to Quincy, and then we'll adopt that case. So it's a good working partnership. And as far as the asset forfeitures, we seize whatever they seize. There's a percentage that comes back to the city of Quincy in our asset forfeiture money to assist us with our drug investigations as well. That source did dry up for a brief period of time through the feds, but they've since reinvigorated that.
And I was going to ask you about forfeitures. It's not in your budget, and I don't know that it comes in under the revenue, but do you know where we're at with asset forfeitures over the last, or our cut of asset forfeitures?
It continues to grow, the account continues to grow. We can only use those funds for certain things, and mostly it's basically to fight the drug trade.
We use it for training and purchase.
We use it for training, we purchase, sometimes we'll purchase undercover vehicles for the officers, we use it for their phone bills, for buying money, to pay informants, that type of thing.
And as it relates to the DEA, the 2 officers dispatched that are detailed in the DEA, so the thinking is the benefit is that we have guys on the inside of the DEA, essentially, that we have a better working relationship with them because we send them, et cetera.
That's generally the gist of it, but also we get their resources. The DEA is a big organization, and we have access to their resources through our offices.
And going back to something that Councilman Forrest had raised, I was going to ask you about the 161, what the high was. I think you said it was about 180, 189.
188 back in the 70s. When I came on in 1983, it was 169. It's gone down as low as 127 way back when times were very difficult. As I said, when I took over in 2008 as the chief, it was 142. We're presently 159 with a budgeted amount of 161.
And obviously, being a ward counselor, I don't get calls about crime other than what you would discuss, nuisance crimes, community policing type issues, or the occasional vandalism, or and even the occasional drug suspicions of drug houses. But so the thing that I get the calls about, the most calls, is about traffic and safety issues related to pedestrian safety and just traffic safety in general. And you touched upon that, but as we continue to develop the city, the city continues to be developed, especially in West Quincy. I feel like everybody drives through West Quincy to get to and from wherever they're going. What, if anything, are we doing in terms of law enforcement to meet that increasing demand? Or what would we do in the future? I mean, if we're not doing it now, what do you think we need to do in the future? Create a better
The traffic approach is basically 2 or 3-fold. Detective Bacchus is working with the mayor's office to do some community service announcements, that type of thing, in all the different dialects, English and many of the Asian different dialects, to get that word out on pedestrian safety, how to safely cross the street, when to stop for pedestrian, how to stop for pedestrian, that type of thing. But we've also received a number of grants over the last few years for pedestrian and traffic safety. Click it or ticket is one of them. So we're putting officers out on the street pretty much every day on grant funding to increase our visibility and to increase our law enforcement efforts as far as the traffic is concerned. It's a never-ending problem, but we're trying.
Right. Well, and that's what I think it's only going to get worse, even despite our efforts, just because the city's growing, where the streets aren't growing, they're not getting wider. We're not keeping up with the paving that we should be doing, but you know, the roads are worse, which causes people to take alternate routes, the more traffic, the timing of signals causes people to cut down side streets, and that's, I mean, that really becomes a serious quality of life issue for the residents of the city, as you know.
I do, yeah, we get those calls. It's a source of frustration for a lot of people.
So is there something, are there any strategies that other communities use, or anything that you thought about how we can kind of grow traffic enforcement? I mean, is that something that's on the, and obviously you get bigger fish to fry, and I get that.
We do, but it is a quality of life issue, and we do get quite a few complaints. You know, unfortunately, a lot of the complaints that we get, we do have signs that we put down, or it's like a radar box that we put down when we do get a complaint. And any of the ward councils, feel free to contact us if you have a complaint in a specific neighborhood. We're glad to put the box up there. What it does is we can actually read it live time. Captain Dugan can read it right at his desktop, and he can tell the average speed, whether there's excess speed. We get calls all the time where people say they're speeding through my neighborhood. We'll put it down, the box down there for a week. We'll do a survey on it, and we'll find out that the average speed is 28 miles an hour, but the actual speed limit is 30. There are cars that may go through there on occasion that go too fast, but in general, most of these side streets, the volume is high, but the speed necessarily isn't. So we do have those resources available to us, and you know, at some point I'd like to expand on that a little bit, because I think then when we have an issue in a neighborhood where if you've got a constituent that's complaining, that's named, we can contact that person and say, look, we can email you the data, you can feel free to take a look at it yourself.
And we should do that in West Quincy last year, but you would go out, I think, I don't know where you got the money from, but I think it was
probably can.
Yeah, but whether, I think it was some leftover money at the end, and you bought, so what you're talking about is the wagon, right? I mean, you have the wagon.
It's not
it
actually
also
a
has
wagon.
the new, you put it on a telephone pole, it
Correct.
was a box, and you barely even know it's there. And it shows the number up there, but it also keeps track. And the traffic, you know, works with the traffic department, we're trying to test some different things and see what was needed, and we're able to put that up for a week and get a tremendous amount of data. The benefit of that is you guys are doing it. And I don't know if you know this, but one of the benefits of that is that you guys are doing it, so that if the traffic department isn't doing it, the traffic engineer isn't doing it, she doesn't have to write a formal report on it, which would trigger the mandatory speed limit law in Massachusetts. The legislature has dictated that the mandatory speed limit on a street is the 85th percentile of the speed of that street. So rather than saying it's, you know, this is a small street, the speed limit should be 20 miles an hour, it's, the speed limit should be whatever the 85th percentile of however fast people are driving. When we have them take a look at Willard Street, I know you were involved in that as well. When we had the state come down and they did the test, they said the 85th percentile is 50 miles an hour.
Well, that'd be good.
And so the engineer tried to pitch how, by law, we have to raise the speed limit, when the whole purpose of the community meeting was to try and slow vehicles down. So one of the great benefits of that box is that you can send the data to the traffic engineer, but it doesn't trigger any type of reporting mechanism which would raise the speed limit on a street. So
Yeah, we work pretty well with Debbie Finnegan. She's in the station getting data from us all the time. So, and you know, I know it's a big city and it's a cumbersome process as far as the traffic goes, but you know, we do work with her on occasion. She's good to work with. So we do share data with her. We do a lot of traffic accident reporting, that type of thing.
I'm glad you're working well with her. Now the traffic, the DPW and the traffic department had done a study a couple of years ago on what the causes of the pedestrian accidents were. They went and pulled every police report for every pedestrian accident that occurred over a 2 or 3 year period.
In this city or in general?
In this city. And then they presented the Public Safety Committee with their findings. And I think one of the things that was surprising was that some high percentage of these accidents were a turn. It was coming out of a turn, a right turn or a left turn. So, you know, drivers looking left, turning right, and a pedestrian pops out in front of them, or, you know, they inadvert, whoever was at fault. But that it was the turns that was causing it. It wasn't, you know, flying down the street and somebody walks out. Do you know if they've updated that at all?
I don't know about that survey, no. I mean, 32 years as a police officer, I can tell you the cause of accidents.
Yeah.
Pedestrian accidents almost exclusively distracted pedestrians. A lot of these accidents, like for example, one of the higher accidents areas or locations in the city is in front of McDonald's on Southern Avenue. And what happens is people coming northbound, take a left across 3 lanes of traffic. The first lane and the second lane stop. The third lane doesn't realize they're coming across, and they collide. That's one of the bigger areas. Mostly it's at turns. If you're looking, most of the accidents we have are at intersections and turns. Rarely do you get a serious accident unless speed is a factor on a straightaway, like a C Street, for example. If we get an accident down there, usually speed would be one of the factors involved, or an impairment on one of the with the driver. But most of the accidents that occur in intersections are because people are cutting across a couple of lanes, going in the wrong, and not paying attention to the second lane. That happens quite frequently with pedestrian accidents. You get a 2-lane road, somebody goes to cross the road, not the crosswalk, the first car stops, the guy coming up to his right doesn't realize that there's someone walking out in front, and unfortunately that's where the pedestrian accident, a lot of them happen as well.
There are two more points that I want to hit with you. I think the tragedy of the state trooper being killed in the line of duty in the past month, I think it was, highlighted one of the major problems with the state's, and I guess the nation's, increased acceptance of marijuana for both medical and for legal recreational purposes. Obviously, we have Vermont, the dispensary opening up in West Quincy. I think a recent article I read in the paper said that they would likely open up in September. That incident with the trooper, someone was coming from a dispensary in Brookline, and they were operating under the influence of, or allegedly operating under the influence of marijuana, and veered across 3 lanes of traffic, hit the trooper who was, I think he pulled someone over sitting in his cruiser, and he killed him. That raises to me, I mean, I read that and I think, oh geez, what if anything do we need to do as a community to prepare for Vermont's opening, if you will, and the potential issues that'll bring. And then I know we got some funding for some of the camera up there. What's the status, what you're thinking in terms of Vermont?
Well, as far as medical marijuana and marijuana legalization issue, I share the same sentiment as my fellow chiefs. I think it's a horrible idea. I think it's going to lead to further incidents like this. That was just the tip of the iceberg. That's the first one that basically may shine a light on this problem. I think it's going to be a serious issue going forward, and I don't support it. That being said, I've met with Vermont. They're a very good company to deal with. I've met with them and their security officials maybe a half a dozen times at least. I've actually taken a tour of the plant maybe a month ago. Yesterday, the day before, some of the day shift commanders were asked to come up and take a look at their security measures and that type of thing. I think they're doing what they can to try and do the right thing. Again, I don't support marijuana, either medical or recreational marijuana, and particularly recreational, but I think they're doing the right thing. I don't think you're going to see a major impact to the community up there. I think, unfortunately, if it's got to be in the city, the location that was chosen is a good location. It's right off the highway. I believe that people will get their medication, for lack of a better word, their medication, and then they'll leave. They're not going to be in the area. They were going to be doing pickups and drop-offs at some of the train stations. I've asked them not to do that. They've agreed they may do it at Quincy Adams as opposed to Quincy Center, which was the original plan. If someone has to get up there, they'd shuttle them up there. I don't know where that stands, but they were good to work with as far as that's concerned. We did go through, and we went through all of their security. We met with Windmill Consulting's Ryan Windmill. He went through a lot of what they've done as far as their security. They met all of our concerns. I know the fire chief has met with them on a number of occasions. They're good community partners, so I don't think you're going to see a major impact. That's my hope for the citizens of Quincy. I think society in general might be a different outcome, but as far as the citizens of Quincy, I don't think it's going to be a major negative impact. I don't know what they promised or what the case was, what they agreed to do for the city, but I know they've met all of our security concerns. So we're hopeful that it's a quiet business up there.
Well, one of the thinking, and I took a tour of the facility as well, the security seems to be as top-notch as you can get for a facility like that. I don't expect that it's going to be, one of the fears, I think, when we first had these public conversations is that they'd be a magnet for crime. People would be trying to rob them, and I don't think that's going to be the case up there because they have some very good security.
They're target hiding it very well, so I don't anticipate that.
I mean, folks won't even get into the to the outskirts of the building without showing some sort of identification, and you can't get into the facility itself without showing a card or being a registration. So I think that's the best they can do, that they're meeting our expectations there. I actually wanted the MBTA pickup. I don't care where it's from, but the thought of having people walk to and from that location, especially on the highway there, while wandering through West Quincy with their medical marijuana.
I suggested actually Quincy Adams, because people will get off the train at Quincy Adams, they'll be picked up, they'll be dropped back off. If it was Quincy Center, I think you may see people kind of there. So it would create another set of problems for us, so. But they were put in.
And one of the things that I think that they were supposed to do, and Mr. Walker, you can, if you're done, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there was supposed to be an installation of a camera on Machine Drive with direct access to the police station. Do you recall that? I mean,
I do, I believe that is either has been done or will be done in the very near future. They're not opening for a couple of months, so if it hasn't been done yet, we'll ensure that does happen.
So, I mean, they're already cultivating up there, so they're essentially in operation. It's not, they're done with the construction up there, so they're in operation, they just haven't dispensed into the public yet. So I would, hopefully, I'll reach out to them too, and perhaps you can too, about making sure we get that. I mean, that camera, because that was one of the main, I thought, benefits of putting it there. It's one road in, one road out, and if we have a camera there, you can see who's going in, going out, if there's an issue. It can be seen right by police. You have an incredible technological capabilities with the cameras that you have all around the city through the different grants that you've gotten and whatnot.
Yeah, they've been very minimal for whatever we've asked of them, so I'm sure that won't be an issue.
All right, and then lastly, the capital improvement plan. It says marked cruisers, unmarked cruisers, prison transport vehicles.
That's correct.
This is your 5-year capital plan. How many marked cruisers are you going to need in 5 years?
That's actually the one-year capital improvement plan. Generally, we get about $300,000 through either the free cash or through the budget. The mayor opted to put it into the capital improvement plan. The lifespan of a cruiser is about 3 to 4 years. What we do is, and last year we got a little bit less. I think we got $199,000. We were able to buy 4 or 5 marked cruisers, or 5 or 6 marked cruisers. The lifespan of those, usually they'll be 2 years in the front line, then they've got a lot of mileage and a lot of wear and tear on them because they are 24 hours a day. Then we send them down to the second line. They go into like the community policing unit, special operations unit, those units, and then eventually they wean their way out to the end of their life. The end of their life is probably 4 or 5 years for the average cruiser. As far as the unmarked cruisers, they're not taking the daily beating, the wear and tear 24 hours a day. So those, the ones that we're presently looking to replace, several of 2000s, 2003s, 2005s, and the most recent are 2012s. So they last a little bit longer. Sometimes what we'll do too is we'll take an end-of-life cruiser, paint it up black or whatever, and then put that in and utilize that for a detective vehicle or an evidence transport vehicle or that type of thing. So that would be probably a 1-year capital improvement plan. The prisoner transport vehicle, like I said, the one that we have now is it was a hand-me-down, it's about 15 years old.
That's a one-off. I mean, you do that once, you're going to have it for a number of years.
We're going to have that one for a while. With it barring any catastrophe as far as an accident is concerned, yeah, we would have that probably for 8 to 10 years, I would say, depending on the vehicle that we buy.
So in terms of marked cruisers, if the average lifespan is about 3 years, you would need to cycle through the entire fleet twice in 6 years.
Probably a little bit less than that. Usually they're good for about 2 years as a frontline vehicle. We try and replace 6 or 7. We have essentially 15 frontline vehicles with the sergeants and all the 13 patrol sectors of the patrol vehicles. Those are the frontline ones. We usually keep 5 or 6 for spares because there's always something, maintenance that's required on all of them, so they're in and out of the maintenance shop. And then they would cycle down to a unit that's less demanding on the vehicle. So usually an average of 2 years is what we get from a marked vehicle.
And you said we have 15 frontline?
We have 13 frontline cars and then
another 5.
two sergeants' vehicles that are also frontline. And then we usually have 5, give or take, depending on accidents and that type of thing. We have spare vehicles, 4 or 5 spare vehicles. And then, if we need be, it would break down, we would get into the community police vehicles, or we'd get into the special operations vehicles if we needed them.
You get some Humvees, you get some...
We do, yeah. Luckily, we didn't need them this year, but we had them available, we had them ready.
In terms of the, also capital improvement, looking for big ticket items, where are we with equipment? Vests for officers?
We're part of the vest program, the grant reimbursement program for vests. The city doesn't bear the responsibility for that. All of our offices are vest are under, I think it's 7 years lifespan. We usually get like 40 a year or 50 a year through a grant through the feds and the state. So we're in good shape with the vest. The firearms, I think we're about 5 years into the firearms, and under the patrol officer's contract, they have to be replaced every 10 years. So we'll be looking at, in the next 5 years, 4 or 5 years, we might be 6 years into it, so in the next 4 or 5 years, looking at replacing those. I've also been doing some research on tasers, doing some, looking at that, and talking to some other chiefs, and trying to make a determination on whether they'd be a useful tool. I know sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. I'm not completely sold, but I do want to provide the officers a layer of safety, and if that layer of safety is available, I'd like to provide it for the officers. But that would be a huge undertaking. They're about, I think, $2,000 to $3,000 a piece, so we're talking a significant outlay if we were to equip all of our officers. But what I would do is look at it in baby steps, perhaps obtain some tasers for the sergeants, the patrol supervisors, as well as the SWAT team, and implement them slowly that way. I know Boston's looking at it. I know the state police are looking at it, so that's something that I'm looking to do something in the future.
And I'll get back to that in 1 second. The firearms replacement, what does that cost when it happens? What is it?
It depends on the weapon, but most of the weapons are about $600 or $700. The ones that we purchase now, they're 6 hours, they're 45 caliber. They're about $700 a piece, but sometimes we can turn those weapons in, the weapons that we have now, to defray some of the cost, because you can't sell a new weapon outside the country or overseas, but they can sell used weapons. So the weapons sometimes retain their value. We'll trade some of them back in and see if we can defray some of those costs.
I don't even want to know where they end up. And as it relates to the tasers, Boston's also doing a pilot program with body cameras. I've never discussed it with you offline, but what's your position on body cameras?
I don't like the idea, because I think it creates a barrier between our officers and our citizens. I don't think it's a foolproof technology. I think it's a panacea. I know it's the way of the future. I may be a dinosaur in thinking that, although I think I'm fairly progressive when it comes to computerization and that type of thing, but I'm not sold on it. I think that there are a lot of barriers. It's very costly. There's a lot of issues as far as privacy goes. There are a lot of issues as far as storage goes with the data that you're accumulating. So there's still a lot of pitfalls to these. And I think, at some point, my hope is that, faith in policing is restored, and we don't need cameras to prove everything that the officers are doing. I think in Quincy, our officers do a pretty good job at that. We don't have very many citizens complaints, thankfully. The ones we do are usually rudeness, they're not abuse and that type of thing. I know any day in the week anything can happen. But so far, I think we're in pretty good shape that way. So I'm not really a proponent of them. If the time comes where I have to do it, we'll do it.
Well, thank you for that. And in terms of that training, talking about your training budget, do you, I know you have certain minimums, that officers need to be competent for training, but do you select other training, like special training, whether it's, I know some, obviously with the talk across the country, the body cameras and the police, the deaths that have occurred in police custody, there's been talk about increased de-escalation training, increasing officers training on how to deal with mental health, individuals having mental health crises. How does it work in terms of training? Do you select topical issues perhaps, or is it what's offered in the region? How do you determine what?
First off, the Mass Police Training Council sets an agenda and a criteria for the 40 hours of training. They usually include in that a legal update, criminal law update, motor vehicle law update, mental health, dealing with the mentally ill, mental health, autism awareness, autism, how to deal with people with autism, that type of thing. So they set that agenda. We comply with that. We comply with that for 40 hours of training, along with firearms, CPR, first aid, those type of things. But we also, funny you should mention, we actually just had an 8-hour class, and it's the third one we've run. We had an 8-hour class today on mental health issues with a clinician from South Shore Mental Health. Part of her program is she has to teach. She taught 25 of our offices today, and we're up to 75 now. In her next fiscal year, she's going to put together a program that will get through the whole department. But we do train on mental health issues extensively, actually. That's part of our training, along with a number of others, all the specialized training, the reconstruction training. We're continuously training, we're continuously looking for updated training. We also, the Mass Police Training Council has put together a program, it's called FBI Leader Program. The FBI Leader Program is a management program, and we're going to put all of our superior officers, sergeants, lieutenants, and captains, including myself. They call it the trilogy. There's the executive leadership, command leadership. We've also taken a media relations class. So all of our sergeants, lieutenants, and captains, through the Mass Criminal Justice Training Council, will be trained in leadership techniques and that type of thing. It gives you the most updated leadership theories and how to deal with problem officers, how to deal with the public. It's pretty extensive training, and it's an expensive program, but the legislature had given Mass Police Training Council some funding, so they thought that'd be a good place to put it.
I'm glad to hear about the mental health training. I've worked in the court system, obviously, as an attorney. It seems like there's just more and more, I don't know if it's an awareness issue, but there's just more and more mental health issues coming out. And lastly, the detail regulations.
I figured you'd get to that.
Yeah, no, save the best for last, right? But have you been able to implement that technology?
We have the software, Jivasoft software. We've implemented the first portion of it, which is the on-duty portion of it, which does all the officers' scheduling on duty and off duty, when their days off are, when they're on duty, on shifts, if they're not on a shift for whatever reason, whether they're on vacation, that type of thing. That portion's been implemented. It's been a little over a month. It seems to be working pretty well. All of our staff seem to be taken to it pretty easily. It's somewhat user-friendly. The second portion of it, which is the extra duty, which tracks details, overtime, court time, and that type of thing, that's in the process right now of being implemented. I anticipate in the next few days or a week at the outside. It's a little bit more cumbersome because we had to load all the databases with all of our vendors, people that we deal with all the time, plus all the offices, their schedules, that type of thing. So that, our detail officers that give out the details have been trained on that. Some of the command staff that will oversee any exceptions, so if there's time that overlaps, they get a notification. That portion of it should be up very, very shortly. And then the third portion of it is an advanced scheduling portion. So officers will be able to, from their tablets or from their cell phone or from a computer or whatever, be able to get on and request time off in advance. That portion of it, I anticipate, will probably be a couple of months away. I wanted to make sure that all the officers were comfortable with the first portion of it, which is the key portion, the on-duty part of it, that tracks all of the vacation, sick, and attendance. And now they seem to be at that point, so now we'll go to the next phase, which will be probably in a couple of days. I've also sat down and met as recently as yesterday with the two unions to try and work out some regulations and some policies and some procedures as to how the details will be given out, how the time will be counted, and how everything will be overseen.
I think that in terms of how quickly the city of Quincy implements technology, as we see often, I think you're moving at breakneck speed, but in a proper manner. And so that's great that how quickly you've been able to implement that.
That's a credit to the staff. Joe Pierre, IT person, is outstanding with Sylvia Romanelli. She's excellent with the actual physical portion of it. There's a lot to it, a lot of data input and that type of thing. They're excellent at that. And the staff seems to be taken to it fairly well, so I'm pretty pleased.
Good. And so the other piece of that was the regulations that you were going to implement, which you think require contractual approval.
That's still a work in progress. We're still bantering back and forth. We've met probably 3 or 4 times now. We all seem to be on the same page as far as what we want to accomplish. It's how we get to that point that we're still discussing.
I mean, there's an article in the Patriot Ledger, I think, earlier this week or last week about...
Yeah, about every 2 days they put one in.
Yeah, well, I mean, to me, it seemed to be like a day late and a dollar short, given that you had already said those were things you were addressing 6 months ago. You know, prescriptive, and no one had raised that about the period of time, the layover period, the layoff period, where, you know, rest period that officers required. That wasn't anything that was brought up.
I just want to say, I know we've gone through some recent challenges, and we're addressing those challenges head-on. We were the ones that vetted this out, we were the ones that discovered the situation that was going on, and we've addressed it, and we're in the process of addressing it, and as you know, that continues. But as far as the way we give out details, the times that the officers work, the amount of officers that work a day, what hours they work, rest periods, we're not unique in any way. This is throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. If you look at every police department in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, they have somewhat the same regulations, the same challenges, the same issues. They have difficulty filling details at points in time. They have officers that work too much on some certain days. So we're not unique in any. I think, you know, there are certain media outlets that want to focus on the Quincy Police Department, and I don't know what their agenda is, but we're not unique. In other departments, it's handled exactly the same way. Cities like Boston, I believe it's either 92 or 96 hours. We don't have that. We have 16 hours, and then they're supposed to have an 8-hour respite. But that's a little bit fluid too, because like I explained in the media article, that, you know, if not, officer works from 7 o'clock in the morning until 3, and then the company's going to be finished at 3:15 or 3:30. I don't want to all of a sudden have to call another officer in and have that company be burdened with a 4-hour minimum. So we allow those officers to exceed that by, you know, it might only be 15 minutes, it might be a half an hour, it might be an hour some days. But there are certain situations where we need officers on certain jobs, particular jobs, to assist with the traffic flow and that. So we do make some exceptions, but those exceptions are overseen by my staff.
Well, thank you, Chief. I appreciate you, and I appreciate the indulgence of my colleagues giving the time to go over it. I think you do a terrific job at the department. I think the men and women in the department are a true source of pride for the city. And anytime that I've ever had to interact with your office on a community matter, usually a complaint of some sort, you've always been very responsive. So you've always been very responsive to this body. So I appreciate that. Happy to support your budget. Would have been happy to support if there was even more in there, but you know, we'll make those.
Every year I should ask for more.
Yeah, I'd give it to you. But, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor DeBona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilor Calmucci asked and answered a couple of my questions, but anyways, you know, the big issue that I really have is and Mike Coffey was up here for the new T-PAL, the traffic, you know, parking, alarm, lighting department that hopefully will be, you know, improved and everything. But his big thing about the traffic concerns around the city was, I'm not on the enforcement side. That's what you guys do. You know, and Councilor Calmucci elaborated a little bit on the cut-through streets, you know, at, you know, hot times of the morning, and rush hours at 3 to 6 or whatever it may be. How can we, as a city or municipality, work with Quincy Police and these new departments, whether it be traffic or parking, or how do we, for instance, what I'm thinking of, do a lot of proactive approach stuff here, Nextdoor, Twitter, Facebook. But, you know, Boston does this Boston 311 app. Are you familiar with it?
Is that the parking app?
Yeah, that's the parking lot. But it'd be kind of like, if we were looking at dimensions, would it be kind of feasible to say this could cover not only parking, it could be also for trash situations, it could be for cut-throughs, do you think something like that we can look into this next phase of all this economical growth? Is it something that we kind of, has anybody been thinking about it or looking at it, whether it be Mr. Walker or yourself?
I don't know the capabilities of 311. I do know we have the MyPD app, which generates complaints, and a lot of it is, quite frankly, a lot of it is traffic issues. But probably what needs to happen going forward is a traffic commission, like a formalized traffic commission with a representative from enforcement, from engineering, for the DPW, all sit at the same table to address these issues. So when I know we do have a traffic engineering, and like I said, we do work well with them, but it's a cumbersome position because there's so much growth in the city, so many new buildings are going up. Parking is always an issue. Parking is, especially during the winter months for us, and I know for the fire department, some of the cut-through streets, is very challenging. But if there was a commission formed with all of the entities at the table, I think perhaps that it could lend some benefit.
Mr. Walker, you got anything you can elaborate as well? Anything else?
Sure, through you, Mr. Chairman. As part of the new website development that's ongoing right now, we are developing a singular mobile app for the city of Quincy. Previously, we've used some outsourced software and some different things. We are developing our own application where folks will be able to take a picture and just text it right into our constituent services hotline, and that'll be working in conjunction with the existing application that the police department now has, which has been a great service to the city. Regarding overall traffic parking and those sorts of things, as the mayor mentioned, in the capital plan, we've outlined a request that we'll talk more about in the finance committee, and we'll talk more about as that process goes forward relative to a citywide traffic, parking, pedestrian, and bicycle plan on how we address some of these issues, whether or not it takes the form of a commission, whether or not it's more capital investment, whether or not, for the first time the city addresses, neighborhood parking rules in a very serious manner. We have, over the course of, it's not this chief, it wasn't the chief before, it wasn't this mayor or the mayor before, but for 30, 40 years, we've just sort of had this sporadic neighborhood parking system, and that's something that needs to be addressed, as well as all these other issues that the council has mentioned over these last couple of meetings relative to traffic and parking. I think that's going to be a big plan, big piece of what the mayor would like to do as part of the capital plan coming up.
I'd like to also say that, I got a few emails about bicycle lanes, bicycle paths, bicycle parking, as we have the racks over at Walton T Station, which is fantastic, by the way. I've been out there a few times and say, wow, this is great. You can take your bike up, park it, go on the T, and at the end of the day, come in. Are we looking, and I know you guys do a really good job, the men and women that are on the bikes right now. When did that come into, today was a beautiful day outside. It was like 85 degrees. Did the people on the bikes get out there yet, or when did that happen?
Our bicycle group?
Yes.
Community police officers and bicycle officers? Yeah, no, they've been out there pretty much all year round.
All year round.
Unless there's sand or unless it's inclement weather, they don't normally ride on a bicycle on any inclement weather. But they did the Christmas parade, they've done events in Boston with the West Boston Police Department. So they've been continuously out there. It's not, they didn't just pop up today because it was sunny, but they've been out there for quite some time.
Do you see increase in crime, especially around those parks, when the weather gets nice like this?
Yeah, well, not necessarily an increase in crime, but an increase in quality of life. We usually put out park patrols, and in fact, the bicycles will be out on the weekends in park patrols to keep on top of the kids. Drinking, this is a busy time of year, graduations, proms, all of that type of thing. So we increase our efforts to try and keep the kids safe. We will have our officers out Flag Day Parade in the parks prior to the Flag Day Parade. So we do increase the park patrol because, yes, crime necessarily doesn't increase in the parks, but the quality of life, the kids drinking, the vandalism, that type of thing does increase at this time of year. So we pay a little bit more attention at this time of year.
Just elaborate a little bit on the Narcan situation, and where you're obviously the pioneers of instituting that, as well as on 60 Minutes and New York Times all across the nation. Where are we in usage of, as of right now, today for 2016? How many people have you revived on that
I
Narcan?
think we're over 100 to date in 2016. I think since its inception, we're up almost 600 reversals. I think we're about 100. I don't know the exact number of overdose deaths because it's somewhat difficult to track, although I do have the technology now that when I get a text message or I get an alert every time we do have an overdose. I get an alert on every death that comes into the city anyway, text message. It's computer generated, but also generated from our sergeants at the communications center. So I don't know the exact number of that, but I believe the reversals are.
What are we on deaths for this year?
Yes,
Yes.
I don't know off the top of my head. I think we're about 21. That's the last I had heard, which was down a little bit actually.
Sure. What were we last year? What was the Narcan administration, applications, I guess you could call it, to how many deaths we had? Do you have an idea?
I believe we were like at 29 or 30, but there again, it's difficult to track the exact number. And I think we were like at 70 or 80 reversals or deployment of Narcan.
On that Narcan, obviously you talked about an illness. How many are you getting that we just did you 2 weeks ago? Or how many repeat services?
Not as many as you would think. That was a
Okay.
concern initially when we implemented this pilot program. That was one of the concerns that everybody had. For a city our size, we deal with a lot of the same population. They don't really migrate too far from the city. So we don't do an awful lot of duplicate reversals. It does happen on occasion. And we're glad to reverse them again. And hopefully the second time is a charm and they can go and get help and we can get themselves back on the road to recovery. But it isn't like a negative problem. It's really not overwhelming.
Right outside here of the Quincy T, Center, how are we doing on that type of patrolling? Just because, this is gonna be our gateway into our city, we're going into a next sphere of, economic growth. How are we doing out there? Do you think with the new economical growth, we get the garage in order, and you think and we revitalize it up, and do you think it'll go down, subside with the amount of...
Absolutely. If the plans go through as the ones that I've heard, as far as a transportation hub, maybe a courthouse, and regenerate that whole MBTA area, I think it will make a vast improvement. We have increased our plainclothes as well as our uniform presence. I received a complaint about some gentleman, I forget his address, but he wrote me an email that he was concerned that he had an exchange student that didn't feel safe coming out of the train station, so she met him across the street. He shared that concern with me. I've received a few emails, and I try to always respond to them, but I do get emails, and that's one of the more frequent emails that I do get. So I've spoken with the management at Starbucks. They had some issues that we were dealing with. We put in not only uniform offices, but plainclothes offices. And if I have funding going forward, especially towards the end of the fiscal year, if I have any money left in my budget here, we'll get me the end of fiscal year, I have been and will continue to increase presence around this whole area because we do receive a number of complaints. And it is the gateway to the city. I want people to be able to feel safe any time of the night or day getting on or off the train because it's necessary. Transportation is necessary. So,
How many do we have in plainclothes right now? Do you have one up there?
as far as we have anti-crime officers during the day. We have 3 officers during the day that are in Quincy Square in the anti-crime capacity. Usually not in uniform. Sometimes they will. We've got Mike Grandolini, who's a maverick up here. He does an excellent job during the day. He's very visible around the square area. And then we supplement that with a walking beat in Quincy Square at night for midnight, who's actually on a bicycle. We have a day patrol officer who's actually on a bicycle. And then Lieutenant Mittens put together an anti-crime unit so that what happens is if we have an issue that we're having trouble dealing with or we need to put some resources on, whether it's uniform, bicycle, plain clothes, he has a few officers that are pretty highly motivated who will come into the area and assist us. And they'll switch a shift or they'll change their schedule to accommodate whatever the needs are.
Also, as well, I just wanted to elaborate a little bit on the sex offender rent, which,
The registry?
registry, yeah. How are we doing that aspect of it? Are we being able to find out where they're at, find out how we're doing on that tracking, I guess you could call
We're
it?
actually in the process right now, they might even do it today. We've done it for like the last 2 or 3 weeks. We do an annual audit. Not many of the communities do it. We do an annual for it at the longest 2 years, a year and a half or 2 years. We do an audit of all of our sex offenders. We go, we visit them at either work or at home. They require to register anyway, but then we go back and at least once a year, we go and verify their residence, where they say that they're living. So we do keep on top of that. That's continuously updated. We have a detective that he does other things, but one of his assignments is to keep the sex offender registry updated.
Thank you for that. I mean, it's important that we're rounding on every single aspect and area that we need to get to the city to be safe, as well as for pedestrians and citizens, children, as well as seniors. I mean, it's all across the board, but I want to say that you guys are doing a great job. The enforcement part of the traffic and, a lot of the one-way streets, a lot of the do-not-enters that happen at certain times in the mornings or at nights, made a few calls and you guys have come right out. And whether or not, he said, hey, bye. Well, I'll be back tomorrow to check on this as well. So you guys are very proactive. I want to thank you for that. Chickatawga Road as well as Samoset Ave is the enforcement end of this, and it's so important that we all get on the same page with these new divisions or these new departments and the enforcement end of it. But thank you for your time. Thank you.
Council King.
Sounds like there's not a word that I could actually reiterate. Thank you for coming here. The only thing that I can see is and I guess let's just go through it, of course. Can we put forward a motion to approve this, please?
Okay, we have a motion to approve on the motion, Councilor Yang.
Yes, I said a couple of
Please.
Good evening. I just want to, of course, everyone thank you for your men and women that are out there. I mean, I've had to call you guys on both, crime issues as well as residential issues. As I'm sure Councilor Finn knows, we live on a very dangerous corner around this farm, and we actually witnessed that car that went up over the bank and into a phone wall. And then also a couple weeks ago when that car car decided to knock on the hydrant and continue driving. I mean, I'm constantly placing calls into your department when there are accidents on my corner, and that's probably something we should think about too, is thinking about how we can make that car a little bit safer. But anyways, I just have a couple of questions about some line items that you have on here, and I wanted to know if you could clarify them for me. The first one is under Patrolman 3, 2, and 1. Patrolman 2, you have doubling from last year's budget from 57,000 to 117.
Yes.
And then the other ones, the increases aren't nearly as much as that. So I just wanted to know, there isn't any description on these three items as to how they're different from one another. And so I'm just wondering why Patrolman 2 is nearly doubling when the other ones are only increasing slightly.
What happens is we have 3 steps. A patrol officer is hired into the department. He's paid at patrolman 1 level, which is a lower level. We have officers like these new officers that we intend to hire, the ones that we've just recently hired, those would be in the category of patrol officer 1. After a year, and the dates always vary throughout the years, but when they go to that second level, after a year, they'd be entitled to a step raise, so that would be a patrol officer 2. And then they reach the patrol officer 3, which is the top level. So that's why the differential between the 3, 1, 2, and 3 is. It's all contractual that they're paid at a certain level.
Okay, and the other question I had, you talked a lot about training. There are 2 line items here for training. One is training in parentheses police, and then the other one is training time. Again, 2 separate line items, so can you just clarify whether...
One is a salary line. We pay out patrol officers overtime if they're taking off their shift to go training. Under contract, we're required to do that. The other training, is that the one that's $75,000?
Yes.
The $75,000 is to pay instructors, or to pay for classes, or to pay, like, if say for an accident recon, just for lack of a better example, an accident recon officer has to go away to training. We pay for the class, and we pay for him to go to that training. So that comes out of that line item. But the actual salary line, the personal services line, that's when we pay the officers to go to the training.
Okay, and then the last question I have for you is just about your department's translation services. Can you just tell me sort of where we are with that? I'm not saying necessarily, hire a ton of people that can, speak multiple languages. I just wanted to know where your department is as far as any services that you offer.
We have a language line that we subscribe to. It comes out of the communications line. We pay for it out of that. It's a subscription service that's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Basically, it's a call-in service that we can offer translation services through that. So that's available 24 hours a day. We have 6 offices that speak the various Asian dialects, and they all speak different ones. I don't know exactly which one speaks what, but we have 6 of those offices. We also recently hired a woman who speaks Spanish. One of the female officers that we recently hired speaks Spanish. So those are some of the services that we do provide. We also have services available if we normally it would be like an investigative type of thing where the officers are certified to speak the language. We may use the state police, for example, if we're doing an investigation and we're speaking with someone, either a witness or a suspect that we're interrogating, we have those resources available. So I think we pretty much have a lot of the services covered. We don't generally run into translation issues anymore because I know that most of the folks have been in this country for a number of years now, and there's usually, if like an elderly grandmother or a mother or a father can't speak the language, there's usually someone there can assist us in translation, especially in an emergency situation, where we utilize our offices, like our CR agent offices, where we utilize them more as an investigative type of thing, where they may sit down and do an interview with a person to try and get a little bit deeper into the story as opposed to just getting someone immediate, like emergency assistance.
Thank you. That's great. And I've spoken at length to our local community health centers, and they actually tap into the translation services line as well. It's a great resource for them, especially because we don't have a hospital right now. So when they had to send our residents out to some of the larger hospitals, their staff will actually accompany them and then call into that line. So it's good to know that we're using that to cover in all the bases of our very community. Thank you.
Okay.
What's that, Council? Thank you, Council. How's the thing?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chief. Again, I know people said enough nice things, but I have to say, just even firsthand, the Quincy police officers specifically, I think that training is well spent from behavioral health issues. The level of sensitivity that Quincy police officers display is absolutely incredible. And I think when you look around the country, a lot of particularly seriously mentally ill persons have been killed, wounded needlessly because of the lack of appropriate intervention at the time. I think commend you and the department for that level of sensitivity and training that takes place working those. But again, as long as I've been here, there's always been that sense of the police department, quite honestly. I wouldn't say that in relation to some of my experience with other departments. The one thing I did notice is that I've known over the years here, overtime is really a difficult thing to predict, per se. But it does appear as though that's coming down this year. Is that significant? Is that
I
accurate?
mean, in the next year's request.
Well, this year, your actual amount this year has come down significantly from the previous years.
I think a lot of that is management practices. We manage our overtime as well as we can. We're aggressive as far as officers come to work, making sure that, we track all the sick time, and make sure that officers are here so we're not going to replace them on overtime. We do have a situation now where I think we have 6 of our female officers that are on, or will be going on very shortly. I think we're going to be having children, so that may drive up some of our costs a little bit. But we're trying to take it out.
You don't have much left to this fiscal year. It looks, again, but they're going to come in under $1 million.
I think we'll come on to the budget. Or right on budget.
Yeah. What about, and of course, you've noted earlier the increases in officers. That must impact it as well.
That helps, yes. And the proper deployment of those officers as well as assisting in keeping the overtime as a minimum as much as we can.
I noticed that it did go, that you're actually putting more, which again is higher than last year. It seems closer to the real estate.
That's correct.
In some ways.
And that was by design.
Yeah.
A lot of times I would manage some of the overtime. If I was running short at the end of the year, if I looked at some of the columns that were going to have some breakage in, for example, if we didn't hire for 3 or 4 months, then I might have some extra funding in one of the patrol officers' lines. I put that in the overtime budget.
Well, I also noticed that, and that was one question I had, is that the telephone operators have reduced that. Is that because of changing technology or is it
No, that's not actually because of changing technology. What it is, we normally get a grant for last year it was $234,000. We get a grant normally for that, and that offsets that line.
I got it.
So that's
we had that reflected.
I anticipate we're going to get it, otherwise I'm going to have to really do some dancing.
Did that that's not reflected in the budget?
No.
Anywhere in terms of the offsets?
No.
Well, that's helpful to know. This is one point. This chief has nothing to do with your department, has to do with this budget. But I've been reiterating, having to say this every year, that these lines really should be broken down in terms of numbers of personnel. And that would clearly, even the question Council Liang had, would be clear, in terms of that. And it gives us a better sense from year to year in terms of how the personnel are utilized, not just in this budget, but every budget. Finally, Chief, and the last thing, and again, it goes back because of discussions we had back in 2010, different things. You presently are not under a contract, you're civil service. That's correct.
I'm
You don't
strong
have a
civil
contract.
service chief.
Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Council. There is a motion on the floor to move passage. Before I do that, it's always great coming last because you have to recycle essentially everything that's said, right? But I'll spare you. I just have a couple questions for myself. As you know, Ward 2 has spent a lot of time working with seniors and those folks that live in public housing, and we do a lot of neighborhood meetings or just kind of get together so that I have, an accurate pulse as to what's going on inside of those buildings. And over time, I know they've dealt with certain tenants who might not have been holding up their end of the bargain. So as a staunch advocate for those folks living in those public housing facilities, in my belief, public safety should be an A1 priority for these folks. I was delighted to see the partnership of the Quincy Police Department with Quincy Housing Authority, really trying to synergize something where, hey, you know what, we're going to have a consistent, visible presence inside of these buildings. So I'm just wondering if perhaps you have any perspective or update around how that's going.
We actually, through our community police unit, have reinvigorated our cooperation with the Quincy Housing Authority. For a time there wasn't an awful lot of communication. We've reestablished those lines of communications. They've been great to work with. They've worked with us, taking a more aggressive role at removing troublesome tenants
either relocating or removing them completely. We've been very successful with that. We have increased the presence. They've actually given us office space down at several of the elderly housing complexes. So we're more involved in those communities, which I think is a good thing. I think they're our most vulnerable population. That's where we're a lot of our priority. You know, I think there's a lot of challenges in the public buildings and public housing face, and they're willing to assist them with whatever they need. And they've been great to work with, quite frankly.
I feel exactly the same way as far as my role in the university, just so you know. And I think it's important that you communicate the progress that's taking place as a result of that. Like I said, I spent a lot of time in these buildings just meeting with folks to hear about concerns. I can tell you that if I went in there 6 months ago, and then I went in there 3 months, and then I went in there a week ago, sequentially, the presence is getting better. And to your point, for lack of a better word, hit rate of getting rid of those troublesome tenants is going up. So I appreciate your effort in that area. It really does. It means a lot to me, and it means a lot to the people who live in those buildings. I did hear traffic and parking. I won't belabor that point. Sounds like you and Mr. Walker have like a pretty good conversation going. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but there's an appetite to have a meeting up in the Pennsylvania section of town, primarily around parking. And I understand, right? We're growing as a city, more people, more automobiles, more opportunities for not thoughtful parking approaches. So I'll be looking to put a meeting on the board maybe towards the end of June. And I'm wondering, while I got you here, if maybe you and Mr. Walker would like to accompany me as featured speakers.
I don't really have any choice now, but
It's just a question.
I'm always available.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. It's an issue, and I know it's not isolated towards you, but these are real issues, and people pay money to live there, and that the expectation is when I come home after a hard day's of work, geez, maybe I can get into my driveway. I understand, right? Quality of life issues. Final question, and I ask it every single year, but it's 25th of May, and it's probably going to start soon. Is some of our higher traffic pedestrian areas, if you will, mainly Mountain Street Beach. As you know, once the weather breaks, we get folks that take up urban camping and other functions down there. And I ask for, because I get it from the residents that live in that area, for increased patrolling in that area. And I know we struggled with this last year. We did.
I know every spring for the last few years, I know you brought it to my attention, to the mayor's attention. We've gone down there with the DPW, cleaned out a lot of the areas, taken a lot of the bushes that people tend to congregate, out of sight. We've cleaned up a lot of those areas. We did it most recently down behind CVS on Southern Avenue, where we're having some issues down there. So we'll be glad to do that. We coordinate with the DPW. They're very, very responsive to our call. And then maybe clean up the area a little bit, and then we generally increase all of our patrols at this time of year. Usually spring and fall for the most part, because they seem to be the most active times. But we'll be glad to do that.
So it's safe to say that we're in a position right now we can be proactive and hopefully address the issue before the issue becomes a problem.
Yes.
Right?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. And again, I appreciate all the work that you folks do. It's not an easy job. Anybody that's willing to carry that out on a daily basis certainly has a high respect level from my standpoint. I think you heard that reiterated here quite eloquently amongst my colleagues. So with that, if there's no further discussion, there's a motion on the floor to move approval on the budget. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much for your support.
Okay, folks, next on the agenda, she was just sitting to my left, but now she's in front of the podium, is City Clerk of the City, Nicole Crispo. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you for having me. So I have brought forward a board chart, and I passed out a packet for everyone to see. It doesn't look like right now we plan on hiring anyone new for our department, so it's going to stand as is. Before you is a copy of the fiscal 2017 budget as proposed. After a complete review of fiscal 2016 and a look at the new state mandates and the election laws, this election year's budget contains some unavoidable increases. I have attached a copy of the legislation to mandate some new election procedures to be implemented in 2016. The first change will be mandated for every city and town to conduct early voting for 11 days prior to the November 8th election. It also calls for an audit to be conducted as well, and that will be a random audit, and the city and town that gets picked for the audit will have to pay for it. Moving forward to the city clerk's vital statistics, proposed budget, all the salary based on union contracts and upgrades. There are 2 upgrades, senior clerk types 1 and a principal clerk 1 will be upgraded to a principal clerk typist 2. And that seems to be the only changes there.
Cole, we're going to just move sequentially, so if you don't mind, you present the department, we'll ask any questions on that.
Shall I?
Of course.
And then move it.
I move acceptance of the, we have to do these one at a time. So given it's level funded, I would move acceptance of the clerk's office. Okay.
Any discussion on the motion? Second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Not passed. Continue, please, Nicole.
Thank you. So then we have the election budget. We do have an increase of $10,625 in the police detail budget, and we believe that we're going to need that for early voting and the presidential election as well. I believe that's it.
Questions on elections, Councilor?
Move to pass.
Second.
Move approval. Any discussion? Sorry? Yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Question? You did have a question. Okay. Councilor Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Talk a little bit about the presidential election. Can you elaborate what people can go out and actually vote early? Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Certainly. So starting October 21st of 2016, you'll be able to go to a polling place in our city. We hope to have it here in this hall, downstairs in the atrium. And we will have all 6 wards available right there for voting. And it'll be regular business hours, 8:30 to 4:30. And we hope to have 2 wardens, 2 clerks, 8 inspectors, a patrolman, and our projected cost on that will be about $42,574. And then we do have some unforeseen costs, so we did ask for $50,000 for the early voting.
So it's good for the people, but it's bad for us because we get to pay more money.
It is unfunded.
Also elaborating on the new things that we approved, the new voting blocks. Have they come in yet, or how are we doing that?
We took delivery of voting booths yesterday, and they're beautiful, and they'll be switched out sometime in July. And then also we have in the next coming weeks, the new voting equipment will be here, and we will pay them their $160,000 that we owe them to date.
Thank you for your time, everyone. Thank you.
Okay. Motion to move approval. All those in favor?
On the money.
Oh.
Does that apply to municipal elections too? Is that re-election?
Only federal elections.
Only federal elections?
Yes.
And that's a local law?
It's
Oh,
a federal mandate.
Okay. Now, people ask me all the time, like every once in a while, someone will ask me, I'm amending that for all the time. Every once in a while, someone asks me, how come we don't have early voting in Quincy? And I tell them we essentially do. Because you can vote weeks ahead of time. If you file for an absentee ballot, if there's a voting booth in the city clerk's office that you can vote ahead of an election once you guys are geared up. And there's always my understanding that if you were, you have to have a reason to vote absentee, but the reason can be, it's a sliding scale. You can go down there and you can apply for your absentee ballot and then be given your absentee ballot, vote in the clerk's office in the lobby area, and then hand the ballot right back to you. We essentially have early voting, right? I mean, theoretically.
Well, there are some reasons that you're supposed to abide by.
And you're gonna be
But-
out of state, you're gonna be sick.
That's right.
There has to be some reason, but.
Early voting has no restrictions, so you can just come in and vote, and there's no questions asked. And we still do have absentee voting as well,
How long have you worked in the clerk's office?
17 years.
And in the 17 years, have you ever seen anyone who wanted to come in and vote by absentee and fill out their ballot right in the lobby and turn it back in? Have you ever seen in those 17 years anyone turned away?
Yes,
You have?
I have.
All right. You have to tell me that story.
I will. I absolutely will.
Thank you.
All set, counsel?
Yep.
Any further discussion on the motion for the elections? Okay, seeing none, last and final. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, ayes have it. Thank you, Joel. On to licensing, please.
So everything seems to be the same, again, in License Commission. Salary increase based on the union contract.
Move approval, Council Calhoun, on the motion.
What's the status of those meetings being televised?
That I don't know if you want to refer to the neighbors.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, that is being worked on between QATV and the city.
Is it in the capital?
It is not at the moment.
It's
The
the
capital
only thing I've
plan is
heard is
able to
that
work on.
being worked on in the city that isn't in the capital improvement plan. Maybe it will be added. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Walker. Thank you.
All set, counsel? Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, ayes have it. Finally, on the poll census, please.
Yes, it stays the same every year. We do it in-house. It doesn't cost any more. We have been getting a better response in the years to date. It is a mandate. Yearly census also generates the jury list and the local database in our city.
Any questions for the clerk on that census? Anybody have any motion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All. Thank you. All right, councilors, the next item on the agenda is the mayor's office. And I'm joined this evening by Lisa McBurney. Welcome, Lisa.
Good evening. I'm here to present to the mayor's office. We're going to present our office and celebrations. It's our honor to work with every single one of you, and I'd love to entertain any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Ms. McBurney on the mayor's office budget? No? Councilman Bond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On some of these requests, there's a little bit of a jump in pay. Do you foresee this happening again next year?
I'm sorry, I have to get back to you on that.
Well, the only reason why I ask is because before these four new councils got on, there was an increase. Now we're going again. Maybe next year, kind of keep it not too much of a jump, maybe. It just help out in general. When I look at some of these percentage increases, I think, a reasonable one is a 1 or 2% increase, cost of living. When I start to see some jumps that are a little bit more than that, I start to think, how much more can we, as a body, take in? And I know there's no crystal ball. It's just, 1 or 2% is a good increase just based on, I just didn't know if you had any answers on that.
I'd have to get back to you on that.
Okay. That's it.
Any, thank you very much, Council Finn.
Just by way of reminder, again, I think we did talk, we are going to be in June, the next meeting, correct? We're looking at across the board in terms of specifically non-union raises.
Departments, correct. Yeah.
And then, again, from my perspective, I think it's one of the steps in what we went through last year was an attempt to really do genuine comparability types of studies to make certain that we have reasonable salaries that are competitive, that attract the best people, and that's a critical point. But I do not like the comparison to, I'll make this point again, to collective bargaining units because they're different processes. And, even in terms of 1%, 3%, and trying to draw comparisons, even in terms of how some of those negotiated contracts distributed that raise, is different than a flat 3% raise. So I look forward to the discussion of the next meeting in terms of the future of issues around how these salaries move forward. But with that, I would, again, move acceptance here if someone hasn't already.
Motion to accept. Thank you, Council. On the motion, Councilman Yang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening. Just two questions on line items. I'm just looking for descriptions on what these line items are based on what's in front of us. So the first one is premium pay. Based on last year, you're asking for the same amount this year, which is $783, but last year the mayor's office used 0% of those funds. So I was just hoping you can elaborate on what this line item is for and why nothing was used, but we're still asking for similar to that line item.
What has happened in the last few years, there have been people who have left the mayor's office who did get premium pay, and my understanding was that last year people did leave as well. This year, I do not believe anyone is coming on that will be eligible for that.
So you're saying that this year
there's just been a change in personnel, and I'm not sure if there'll be other personnel being moved around who then would be eligible for premium pay.
And then the second one is are the dues. Just wanted to know if you could just explain what that line item is for.
Sure, we pay dues to the MAPC, which is the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the MMA. So we have dues to several different organizations that the city and the council has been involved with.
Just to go back to the premium pay line item,
sure.
And I just want to clarify, so you don't predict that we're going to be tapping into that again this year?
I can't say, only because if there are changes in personnel in the mayor's office, some of those folks would then be eligible for premium pay.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Council Yang. Any further discussion of Council Calhoun?
Good evening.
Good evening.
It notes in the budget summary there's job reclassifications for 2 employees. What is that? I don't understand what that is.
I have to get back to you on that, I'm sorry.
Perhaps for you, Mr.
Oh, I'm
Walker.
sorry. I did not realize that was a reclassification. That pertains, I'm sorry, Council, to Mr. Walker and to Mr. Grazioso. I did not, I'm sorry.
What's the reclassification?
The reclassification would be their salaries, would be a raise in their salaries.
And those are the only salaries that are being raised?
Those are
I
the...
guess I'm confused. Isn't the mayor's salary going up and your salary or the chief of staff salary going up? I don't understand why 2 of them are called recent classification, perhaps if anyone else knows. I mean, is that what we do?
My understanding is, I believe the mayor's salary is in the ordinance for next year in terms of what that salary would be.
So do you have, can you clarify? What I'm confused about, not what's happening, but with why 2 employees are being reclassified when there's, 4 or 5 employees getting proposed raises. I don't understand what that means.
Excuse me, Councilman. It appears that there are 2 positions in the mayor's office that are getting the cost of living increase. And then I'm going to assume that maybe they've taken on additional duties, so they are now upgrading their positions to reflect those additional you know, the additional duties that they're taking on.
So the reclassification refers to?
They refer to the director of operations.
No, I get the two positions that we're talking about, but the two director positions, but so the reclassification is, your presumption is that it includes additional job duties, because the reclassification is changing job duties, right?
They're doing, I'm assuming that they're doing the same job duties and then some additional.
Do you know what the additional?
I can try to clarify, Councilman, a little bit uncomfortable.
Let's talk about Al.
Sure. I believe it was the mayor's intention, not so much to change the job duties, but to bring these positions in line with what he felt the responsibilities were in line with already, and thus the term reclassification. I believe his thinking was to bring them in line with some of the mid-level department heads that you'll see throughout the budget. I think that was his intention. With the terminology, again, I'm a little bit uncomfortable talking about it. But
No, I mean, I guess I'm, again, just don't understand what the job.
yeah, again, I think it's not so much a change of duties or expanded duties against the mayor's belief that these positions have a level. This Al's position, Mr. Grazioso's position is at a level of responsibility, a level of hours involved, and a level of authority that is at a level with some of these other department heads that are at the same salary level.
Okay. So it's more of a salary reclassification than a job reclassification. That'd be fair to say.
Sure.
I tend to disagree a little bit with the premise, the policy premise of this, because I actually think that those jobs would be equivalent to some of our higher level commissioner salary positions. And I think, again, it's the same conversation we had with the traffic engineer position when we did the salary commission a year ago. If we want to get highly qualified individuals, we have to pay a premium for that. I think those two positions warrant very highly qualified individuals. I won't speak to whether or not I think you are. certainly Alex. But in all seriousness, I do think, from my standpoint, having interactions with many different department heads, those two positions, outside of the mayor, those two positions run the city through the mayor. So I think it should be at a higher level, to be honest with you, but if that's what the mayor's requesting, so worth consideration. I had another question. So, as you know, I had an interaction several months ago with the DPW commissioner about repairing streetlights. And there's a separate budget for streetlights and streetlight repair. And there was a presentation a year or two ago where the city council was asked to essentially buy, even though it was for a dollar or for nothing, the street lights from the utility company, and so that we could take over the repairs and do it quicker and it's cheaper than what we were paying. That's always been under the DPW. I'm looking at the DPW budget and I'm not finding the line. I don't know, Sue, if you know what line that is. Off the top of your head, if you can find it, feel free to chime in. But I was told by the DPW commissioner when I asked to have a streetlight repaired on behalf of a constituent that the DPW has nothing to do with the oversight or administration of the streetlight repair program. And I don't see anything in this budget that suggests that line item for contractual services, which I know is Larry's doing, constituent services is handling that. So from a budgetary standpoint, I guess I'm curious as to why we're leaving the contractual budgeted amount to pay for services under the DPW, yet the DPW commissioner indicates he has no oversight authority, and it's in the mayor's offices of constituent services plate, essentially, of responsibilities. Why we aren't shifting that contractual number over to this budget?
Again, Mr. Chairman, I believe
Yeah.
You're
Yes.
correct, Council. I believe that that was more of a semantic miscommunication from the commissioner. I think technically the contract for the private vendor that was hired to replace the streetlights on a weekly basis, that contract does go through DPW. It is in their department. For all intents and practical purposes, the interaction, communication, and the work involving the private contract COBL revolves through our constituent services and of our office. So I think that, and that budget, as far as I know, I believe is in the traffic and parking budget, and it remains there, will remain there in the new department, basically because that's where the contract is derived from. But again, from a practical standpoint, I understand your point, and it's a valid one relative to what was communicated to you. But from a practical standpoint, that contract with COBL Electric, and by the way, they're doing a terrific job. They're not 100% perfect, but we are about, I would say, tenfold better than we were with National Grid. Only the lights, we have to try to track them down to get things replaced. We now have a system in place where someone calls, it gets into our system immediately, it's tracked, and COBL goes out at least once a week and more if necessary, and it's working pretty well. And that, again, that's all probably going to change, and I'm going to bring it up again because of the capital plan at some point. We're going to be doing the LED conversion, and that's going to involve maintenance and operation as well. So there's going to be some changes in that as well. But again, I would just suggest that that was a communication issue more so than a budgetary discrepancy or anything like that, Council.
So we're going to leave that line item outside of the mayor's budget because the hope is that it'll eventually be overseen by someone other than the Office of Constituent Services?
I think the Office of Constituent Services, as it does with a lot of departments, will always have an active role in it. Going forward, when and if this council approves the conversion to LED and the operation and maintenance that goes along with that, there's certainly going to have to be a discussion of where that funding for the maintenance line belongs. I think it does belong technically in the traffic and lighting department. Frankly, going forward, if the department is formed successfully and the mayor's able to implement some of the organizational things that he'd like to implement on this, I think you're going to see a lot more of it coming out of that department than perhaps is today. But there's always going to be and I can't break down percentages of it, but there's always going to be a huge constituent services end of it because people call City Hall, the street light is out. We are generally the first stop for that. You know, I don't know that they're going to call DPW. If they do, it gets into the system. But we're always going to have a big piece of that in our office, handling the day-to-day requests of fixing streetlights.
And I don't have a problem with that. I think the Constituent Services Department does a great job. You know, they do a lot of work. They do similar work to what the ward councilors do on a daily basis as well. But I guess what my concern is just kind of the structural integrity of the budget here and where the oversight is coming from. So if we have a large contract going out to a vendor and the DPW is providing zero oversight of the work that's being done by that contractor on a daily basis, and I think I was told they come like twice a week or once a week. They come like Tuesday, Thursday or something, right? So if on 2 days a week they're doing this work and the DPW is providing zero oversight, I'm concerned because do we have the skill set in the mayor's office of constituent services to oversee electrical repairs that are happening in the future will happen to LEDs? I mean, there's got to be a level of competence here, and I don't know the background of the folks who are in there now other than what I've seen they're capable of doing. So maybe they do have technical backgrounds to where they can do contractual oversight for a contract like that. But I guess my concern is if the contract is being overseen by the DPW, then the DPW should be in charge of the contract. If the contract is being overseen by the Mayor's Office of Constituent Services, then the Mayor's Office of Constituent Services should have that line item in their budget, it should have someone with the capability and the skills to oversee a technical contractor like that. Yes, that's a question.
Again, I believe in at its base level that something was miscommunicated to you.
I'm trying to find the email, and I was told that the DPW, I was told by the DPW that
Understood.
there's no oversight
And
of the traffic.
I'm suggesting to you that was a miscommunication as of.
Sure.
Mr. Grazioso was the gentleman.
I'd be happy to make a clarification. Constituent Services handles the calls, puts those calls in. We get a report from Coviello. We share that report with DPW for the billing purposes. So when we get a report that comes back on a weekly basis, what's been called in, what's been fixed, if it has been fixed, what DPW gets that same report, goes to the billing office. So we're in communication a lot. So it's strictly a matter of paying the bills. That's what they do down there. But we share those reports. They get sent down to Kathy McAuliffe.
No, I reviewed it because I was concerned. I asked the auditor to pull all of the bills, all of the warrants that were paid to this company to see who was signing it. If they were actually being signed by Constituent Services or if they were being signed by the DPW, or approved by the DPW. So that raises a great concern because it'd be one thing if we were told the DPW is going to oversee it and we vote for it in the budget and then it actually isn't overseen by the DPW. That's one thing, and it's overseen by another department. But I want to make sure that the department that is overseeing the work is the same department that is overseeing to make sure the work gets done. You know what I mean? They're taking the calls and they're making sure the calls are getting, that the actual action is being completed on the street.
Sure, and I think part of the future with the TPL department is, I think the future plan is that they would handle the maintenance also. So it's all going to be under that one department. That's the plan. We'll be converting to LEDs. With LEDs, there'll be a lot less maintenance, which is great. So that is the plan. That will all come under that department. Obviously, there'll still be constituent service. We'll still get the calls. We'll get the calls from counselors.
So who's currently doing the oversight of the contract?
It's a combination. It's a combination. We go through those weekly reports. We work with the police department also on the lights. We have the police, when they go out at night, they report lights out. They check, they report back to us on a weekly basis or every couple of weeks. So it's a combination of everyone working together.
All right, fair enough. Thank you, I appreciate it. See what I said about the competency? Very competent fellow. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Pleasure, Councilor. So Council Finn has a motion to approve. Is there any further discussion on the mayor's budget? You know the motion to approve. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. During celebrations, account, please.
The next account is celebrations. Through some of the organizations that we support through celebrations, Quarry, the August Moon and Moon Festival, the Christmas Parade, Arts Fest, Flag Day, North Quincy High and Quincy High Seniors Day Out, Vietnam Veterans Events, Annual Vet Fishing Event, Jackson Park, just to name a few.
Any questions for Ms. McBurney on celebrations account? Have a motion?
So moved.
So moved. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much, Lisa. The next item on the agenda is a continuance from the first budget hearing. It is regarding the health department. And we're joined here this evening by the health commissioner. Welcome, Drew.
Hi.
Hi. Welcome back.
Always a pleasure. So I was here before, you guys wanted a little clarification, gave you some job descriptions. I'd like to move this.
Councilor Harris has a motion on the floor to move approval, but I think where this was continued from last time, I'm going to, if you respectfully yield to Councilor Kane.
I respectfully.
Okay.
Thank you,
Councilor Kane.
Thank you. So thank you for coming back here. did go through this last time. We had some questions. We got a job description here presented for this position that was in question. So before, I guess I go any deeper into this, I just want to know. So this is defined as a QPEA union position.
Yes.
Now, is this, pardon?
It is a union.
Yes, yeah.
It's in the union right now.
So,
I'm creating the position.
but it's been approved by the union?
Yes.
Okay, and at that level of salary?
Yes.
Okay, so there's basically nothing that we can do about that role, okay. So, you know, the job description is really nice. I was a little surprised though, there's some things, actually there's a lot of things that aren't mentioned in here. And I just wanted to get an understanding from you, you know, a little bit more about the deficiencies that I see in this budget and the needs that I see are required for the city that aren't being met. So going forward with this sort of differential that you're looking to fill with this role, how are we going to provide a higher level of services? Some things that I noticed, and they actually just came to mind when the chief of police was in here earlier, but there's no mention in this job description and in anything really in the Department of Health's description that mentioned anything about opioid crisis. So I actually want to understand how does the health department actually work with QPD? This is a public health issue that I've come to understand. So is there any involvement at all
Well,
in that
I'm
regard?
a member of the Mayor's Task Force. We regularly with the Quincy Police Department on a monthly basis with other members of the Mayor's Task Force, State Community Services, different volunteer groups that are there, the Norfolk County Sheriff's Office, police, Council on Aging goes to some of these meetings. So we are active when we do the Prevention and Wellness Trust Fund grant. Substance abuse was one of the conditions that we identified. We work closely with them on that. We work with the management of health, South Cove on different issues. So we do deal with that. We also do have the, talking about the needle, we have a take back program where you can come in and get your red boxes from the city of Quincy. You can purchase it from us, and then we will actually take the shops and bring it back into the charge. We actually do all of the training for DPW work with the Parks Department on all the bloodborne pathogens, so if there are needles in the pot, they know how to pick them up. They all have the shops containers in their vehicles that are provided through my office. We also go out and pick up needles. I pick up needles probably once a week. I get a call as well.
Do you really?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a heavy issue. I want to make sure that we've got adequate resources that are assisting all the departments that are involved. So, I talked to you today. Thank you again for going out to the neighborhoods. We've got another couple of requests and reports that we've had about the road problem, and I think we need to understand that this is something that's not going to immediately go away, but it's something that needs desperate attention. I mean, now it's a crisis without being it's probably a little more dramatic sometimes just because of the nature of the animals that we're dealing with here, but it's something that needs attention and needs resources. So, again, I come back to a place where, especially in Ward 3, we have a significant portion of the constituency that don't speak English. And, again, in just looking at this budget, I'm just wondering, why we're not increasing funds to that's kind of there are two parts to it. Why aren't we increasing funds for outreach and translation and education portion? We're kind of have to send over that tearaway sheet, which is just kind of a guideline, but that's in English. How to get that translated?
That is translated in Chinese.
It is.
Oh, yeah, both sides.
Okay. I didn't see that one. I just saw the one sided.
We have a more elaborate one that is, it's translated on both sides. The translators actually did it.
Okay. All right. So I guess in continuing to talk about this position, because it's just a newly created position here. There's
it's not a newly created position.
It's not a newly created
position that has been there all along. It's just not been funded.
Right. In over how many years?
12 years.
You said 2003, correct? Yeah. That's a long time.
Yep.
So it's just interesting to see.
At the short end for 12 years.
Yeah. Yeah. So why in the past hasn't it been funded?
Downturn of the economy.
Really? And do you think that this position is more important than any other position?
I think it's one of the most important positions in the budget.
Yeah. And just talk a little bit more for the public about this position.
Well, the position allows us to do so much more outreach to the public. Right now, we go into all the senior buildings, we run programs in there on a regular basis. We're running those programs now through the Prevention Wellness Trust Fund grant. One of the conditions of the Prevention Wellness Trust Fund grant is a continuation of programs after the funding is dried up from the state. So one of the ways that I've addressed that is to create this new position. This new position will become a master trainer in all the programs that we're going through now through the Prevention Wellness Trust Fund. We've gone through programs, chronic disease management, CDSMP, they call it CDSMP, and then they have the CDSMP for diabetes. We also have a matter of balance class. And these are classes that if we have a master trainer on staff that can train other people to go out and do the classes, it saves us money by not having to continually train people to go out and do it. We'll have a master trainer on staff. So that's one of the other advantages.
And who are you training? Who's going to train?
We would train interns, we would train other people from other organizations within the city. We do all kinds of training right now. We do food safety for all the restaurants. We do choking for all the restaurants. We do bloodborne pathogens for all the DPW workers, CPR, first aid, DPW workers, city clerk, city hall workers. We do training with AEDs through grant funding through emergency preparedness, Region 4B that we belong to. We've supplied, I'm going to say probably about 15 different AEDs to different public buildings throughout the city. And we conducted training for all the staff in those buildings so they know how to use the AEDs. Matter if they ever need to. So those are some of the other training.
And so are the interns paid?
No.
They're not paid?
No.
So we don't pay interns?
No.
Anywhere?
No.
Okay. So free labor?
Free labor.
Okay. Which is another philosophical debate probably for another time. But, so you're going to continue to run around and take care of the road problem?
I'm a hands-on person, so I'll still be out there.
Okay. And 9,000 more in this budget here is adequate to handle that. But you said outreach again. You said the outreach portion is being decreased.
It's being decreased by, we've actually taken some of the, one of our outreach workers is a retired state worker through the TV for the state, and she worked in my office 1 day a week, and the state paid for her. So she's not allowed to make, she can only make a certain amount of money because she's got a pension already coming from the state. You're only allowed to make a certain amount off of that. That's what the decrease is on that there.
Okay. All right, I'm still just having a bit of trouble with this. I don't think it's actually getting to the need that, we don't want to be bothering you. I think we should have a resource that adequately represents it. Outside of that, since you can't touch the position that's not new, as you say, I'm going to move to cut that other position or cut this line item from personal service by $60,000.
So that is, council, just so.
What line item?
Well, from personal service.
Sequentially, he's correct.
Yes, Council, he can make a cut from the bottom line of personal services for the health department.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor. Cut personal services by, did you say $60,000. Any discussion on the motion, Councilor Forrest?
Thank you, Chairman. Prince, for the point of order, there's already a motion on the floor to approve.
What he yielded to Councilor
I would just, Robert's rules there. I guess on the motion, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chair, I just want to express my support for this position. I think that your department has been one of the most responsive You have been a tremendous resource. I know that for me, I have, some of the blighted property issues. You've really been sometimes the one that's been able to get things over the finish line for me, that has just been out, chronic problem in the chronic problem list. And your department has really been the one, whether it's through working with the mental health advocate, working with the follow-up. And I get that when times were tough financially in the city, we decimated Chapel Parking to their staff levels. And I understand we made that cut, and now is finally the time we're being able to restore you. I think that your department also has been active with me anytime there's a storm event, when we're setting up shelter, we're doing our emergency planning training. I think there's a lot more to your department than, well, I do appreciate it. I think you do phenomenal, again, in public outreach, and you do ATV, and I think there's a lot of lesser knowns about what support you're able to give citywide. So I just want to be, I will be supporting your, the additional funds for your budget and not supporting the cut. Thank you.
Thank you. So I did get a point of clarity from the parliamentarian there on kind of the sequence, because Councilor Harris had jumped out and put a motion on the floor to move passage. So do you accept the, I guess you withdraw that motion in response to Councilor Kane's willingness to cut?
No, I want to move the question.
Okay, he wants to move the question, so that's...
Point of parliamentary procedure. Moving the question requires a separate vote. So Councilor Harris has moved the question, which requires a vote on moving the question. But the question that he's proposing to move is the amendment. It doesn't have to be friendly accepted. You vote, when someone makes a motion and another councilor makes an amendment, that amendment is either accepted as a friendly amendment, which means it doesn't have to be voted on, and it can be added to the full amendment, or it's hostile, which means it would have to be voted on. So a motion to move the question is non-debatable, and the question before the body is Councilor Kane's hostile amendment to Councilor Harris's motion.
With whether or not we accept the cut for
Correct.
$60,000.
Correct.
That's non-debatable. He did yield.
He can yield after he makes a motion, so the motion on the floor is still the motion on the floor.
So essentially, we got before us a hostile amendment.
So the motion was to move approval, not to move the question. The original motion was to
He
move
just
the
made a
question.
motion to move the question.
No,
Now
his-
the third motion.
I think it was kind of, his original motion was to move approval.
Correct.
He can withdraw the motion and move the question, and then we vote on the amendment, and whether that passes or fails, either gets added to or doesn't get added to his original motion.
Joe Shannon's here, field day doctor in health.
Council Finn?
Just to add to the confusion here, that I want to remind you, the only reason we're here this evening is because Councilor Kane requested that we put on hold because he had specific issues. And so with all due respect with Councilor Harris in terms of moving approval, it was really only appropriate. The real true point was to return it back to Councilor Kane, because he's the person who requested it put on hold. Just as I requested the planning department budget be placed on hold.
Right.
So again, I believe he's offered a specific cut that's before us. To me, that's the method we should be going.
Any,
I'll withdraw the motion, but I want to speak.
please do.
Thank you, and I appreciate everything my department does, everybody's feelings about tonight. But I really want to speak out about this position that when it was, brought up at the last time we met and talked about it, first thing that came into my mind was a situation that is touching every single ward, and don't think it isn't touching every single precinct, and that's what was mentioned tonight, the opium problem. This is just one of the many problems that this new position, with the help of 11 probably interns that are going to fight to come, if the program runs good, fight to come to this city from top-notch schools. And we're talking about having an outreach program that can eventually, it maybe won't show up on a dollar, it might not show up on a scale, might not show up, but you know what? If we have one less parent, one less family member lost because we do something that may not show up on the books, but is going to cost $80,000+. When I think about what we do in the wards and the families we touch and the families that we have to go visit, and if we don't do everything we can as a body to make sure that even though it doesn't show on paper that we've done everything, I don't think that I could walk up to somebody and say I did everything I could, maybe in a short time that I get to sit here, if I didn't vote against my distinguished colleague's motion. You can't put a dollar value on it. And it not only, we're only talking, and I want to quote a few of the folks. Chairman, you used the word invest in education earlier. And Councilor Palmucci mentioned the opium problem. And stopping it at the beginning, I know goes at the school level, but stopping it mid-storm, that's what we can do. We can do this with young, energetic interns, nursing interns, medical care interns that are going to be coming to us. And the chief said, curb the storm. Folks, let's curb the storm. And also, this is not only about the opium problem. We reach out to our seniors. We reach out to young women who have children to make sure that immunization takes place. We don't even know, we hear every year a different strain of flu, a different strain of diseases that are out there that we're going to be able to educate our folks. If we wait until the boom of our population, now, as was mentioned earlier by Mr. Shealy, he hasn't had this in his budget, but quite frankly, the way the city is booming, we better put it in our budget, because if we wait for the boom, it may be too late, and we'll be behind the 8 ball. So I'm not asking you folks, I'm actually, while I'm here, I'm sitting here, as short as it may be, as I mentioned, I'm begging you folks, this is very important to the city of Quincy. I think it's very valuable. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I agree with my colleague from Ward 6, and I think that he raised a very legitimate and valid concern about what the city's doing in terms of battling the opiate scourge that's taking place all over the country, really. And as the chief said, we're not even here, and all of us know that. I, however, will support this cut. I don't see this as putting more boots on the ground. I see this as putting more people behind the desk. And I think what we need in times of crisis are more boots on the ground, more people doing triage rather than oversight. And I think Councilor Finn had noted this in one of the previous budget hearings. He said it's not like we're adding laborers. It's not like more problems are going to get fixed because there's people behind a desk directing people. What we need is more boots on the ground. We need more, if we need another nurse out there, that's something I'm happy to listen to. And you heard the chief tonight say, we could always use more officers in the drug unit. That to me sounds like a far more glaring need for our limited taxpayer resources than putting someone in charge of 2 other people. And I think the chief said we could double. We double the drug unit. It's at 8, we go to 16. I would gladly support $60,000 going from this budget, from this position, to going into the drug unit. And I think that would have a real impact. That would really make a difference on the street, make a difference in our neighborhoods. And when we're talking about, keeping people off of drugs and actually taking a proactive approach, there are no better boots on the ground than the Quincy Police Department when it comes to battling opioid addiction, when it comes to battling drugs being dealt in our community, when it comes to keeping kids off of drugs through the DARE program and community outreach. So when it comes to our very limited taxpayer dollars, I have a hard time seeing how this position is better than adding to the drug unit, is better than adding to the school budget for educational resources targeting drug addiction and helping educate younger Quincy residents how to avoid drugs altogether. Those, I think, would be better expenditures in this budget than this particular position. And so I commend my colleague from Ward 6. I agree wholeheartedly. We have to do everything we can as municipal leaders in this fight. And as I've said a couple of times already in these hearings, this budget, this document is the policy document as to how the city will move forward, how we will interact with the citizens, how we will spend every taxpayer dollar that we take. This is the document that says how we're going to do it. This is the policy document. It is the blueprint of government action. So when I ask myself what more could we do, we could add to the drug unit. We could add to an increase in investment in education around substance abuse. Those are both things that I would gladly support, and I would encourage the mayor to increase funding for. This, I will vote for the cut. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Can I just say,
I don't know, I didn't ask your question. Thank you, though.
Council Finn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With the budget process, one of the things I really try to do is avoid kind of non-empirical flights of fancy. And I think that there's a reasonable argument that could be made related to these positions based perhaps on what they have done traditionally or what they plan to do. But I have to make it clear, I don't think any of it, even including the discussions Mr. Shealy was having related to supervision of interns, is that I have seen nothing in terms of a performance-based plan around how this would be addressing the opioid epidemic. And, if in fact I haven't seen any plan in terms of what such interns would be used for, I didn't hear, again, any of those referenced per se. And I would gladly entertain something that came back here with clear-cut, defined outcomes and descriptions and the like. So, again, I think it's important that not to emphasize the impact, to come with this with a certain impact bias that says this cut is going to have anything to do with our ability to address the issue of opioid addiction. Just not true. And so, from that perspective, I probably will support Councilor's cut.
You all set, Council Finn?
Yes, thank you.
Council Shannon?
I'm fine.
All set, Council Harris?
Thank you again, gentlemen. Earlier this evening also, again, I want to reemphasize, and I understand my colleague, Councilor Finn, but I certainly would like the number that was given out, 100 people were revived by Narcan. If we could get that number to be cut like a budget, that's what we really need to do. Also, Councilor Palmucci mentioned the mental health situation, which is another issue that can be brought up and that could be dealt with folks that, with more resources. And boots on the ground makes it sound like a war, and you're right, it is a war. But I know that those interns will not be, there's not enough room in that building where you're in right now for people to be behind desks, interns behind desks. They'll be out.
They'll be on the street.
They'll be out on the street, they'll be with our seniors, they'll be with the folks that we need, you know.
They'll be in senior houses throughout the city,
And
running programs.
absolutely, having a mother in one of those senior housing, I'm sorry, I don't mean to take it to a personal level, as I've been corrected before by Councilor Finn, but yes, all I can say is that I really stand by my convictions on this position should be put in place. I think it would be a great thing. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Yang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also wanted to speak to you, not just the, pest and rodent issue that we're having, or the opioid issue that we're having, but even in a larger sense, like I had said earlier, I've been talking to a lot of our community health centers in and outside of the city, and a lot of the issues that we're facing are having enough people on the ground, talking to people, the residents, not just talking to the organizations, but talking to the actual residents that come in and out of those doors. And so, I agree with what Councilor Palmucci said about oversight and how, on paper, yes, it sounds great to have, someone that's going to be sitting behind a desk saying, you're going to be able to do X, Y, and Z, but to not have the bodies to actually go and implement these plans that you want to put through, or to be able to provide the services to the residents that need it. Again, I'm going to reiterate, we do not have a hospital in the city right now. And so, yes, we have our community health centers. Yes, we have BIT Mountain. Yes, we have, South Shore Hospital. But, with the growing population that we have, with all these units that we have coming into the city as well, I believe we have 2,000 slated over the next couple of years. And, we need to increase the amount of people we're going to have servicing our actual residents and not just sitting behind a desk. So to that, I would like to just say that I'm going to support Councilor King's proposal or motion to cut this one.
Councilor Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Line item 512020 is the Director of QEH Nurses, which is a union position. That's the new position. I'm in support of that. That's $85,912. I'm in support of that. However, when you look at the personal service increase, it goes from $650,693 to $756,955. It's a $106,000, 262 increase. With Councilor Kane's cut of $60,000, which is a modest and fair, I think it's a fair cut, it still leaves you with a $46,262 increase from your personal service that you had for 2016 budget to 2017. So he's not bringing you in the negative, you're still getting $46,000 more in your budget. I think it's a modest cut. It's fair. And Councilor Kane has done his research. He's done his homework. He asked for the job application, he's dissected it, and he went with $60,000. And I'm going to support it. I'm going to support his cut. But I am in favor of the new position for Director of QPH Nurses. And with that said, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Drew, I don't want to, for me personally, undermine anything that your department does. I think, when it comes to production, I think that, you folks, you're high producers. I think that your department covers a lot of areas. And, I think we as a city have certainly taken an initiative to identify the opioid crisis. And as much as we do internally as a city to combat that issue, there's also at the peripheral a lot of social services that are working here in the city. I think of Bay State, for example, they've recently expanded some programming and more to help combat this. So I know that as a city, it's something that we're taking on from a governmental standpoint, but I also know that there is this help around the periphery. As I kind of contemplate this whole budget season, it's interesting the way my brain's wired is obviously, you and I have discussed on the finance guy, and I heard a presentation, from the financial advisor that, we have areas that we could work on in terms of, the OPEB and, funded pension liability. So I always, the stakes are higher in terms of evaluating, positions. And, much to Council Kane's dichotomy of the job description, I actually have to concur. And, I do like the fact that there is additional resources going to your department. It just, maybe they're not in the amount that you wish. But with that, I don't know if there's any further discussion on the motion. Mr. Walker?
Just through you, Mr. Chairman, just a clarification. The motion is to cut $60,000 from personal services, from the bottom line of personal services. If it's the council's intention to cut the position, that's essentially what the $60,000 cut to that line does. It doesn't provide any additional resources for us, for the city or the health commissioner, in any of these lines. These are jobs set by salary, set by contract, set by regulation. A $60,000 cut, it doesn't, and this is purely clarification. I guess if we're looking to cut the job, let's cut the job. But I don't know that the $60,000 cut does anything. It just leaves $15,000 out there that's not going to be spent.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, can cut the job.
Of course you can.
No,
This is a union position, correct?
Do you want to state your point?
we do not cut single line items. We can cut the bottom personal line item. I understand that the intention behind the cut is to preserve the $80,000 position and the $60,000 position.
Correct, out of what would have been.
So that essentially they're preventing you from hiring a new replacement.
Thank you. Okay.
All set? Chris?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Walker? Any further discussion on the motion, Council Kane, all set?
Yes.
Okay. Madam Clerk?
Okay. Could I
Please.
just something that Mr. Walker had said, just struck me. I wanted to respond and just throw it out there. I mean, we don't, again, this is a policy document. We can't add to things. We can't add lines. We can't add money. So if we think the drug unit should be doubled, we can't do that. If we think that there should be a new position of another nurse, just a line nurse, and there's two existing, we think there should be a third one, we cannot add that. So to say that we're not giving the health department resources to make improvements is, it's a little disingenuous, because all we're saying is we're cutting $60,000 from the bottom line number. And I know Councilor Finn and I disagree about how monies in the budget can be utilized, but as we've seen through this budget, and as we've seen at other times, the administration can create positions. If there's a position on the books, the administration can fund the position. You can also fund contracts with outside vendors, or you can fund contracted positions that aren't necessarily line items in the budget. So simply by reducing the payroll services by $60,000, I think the intent is not, again, and Councilor Crowe made a good point. Mr. Shealy, the department does for bang for the buck, you do a terrific job. I think when we had the hearing on the rats, we had said, you need more money for something, you come to us, right? Well, here I am. You haven't made, to me personally, I haven't been proven that there's a case that this is going to make things any better. That's where, so if you come in and said, we need $80,000 to hire 2 more nurses, or $120,000 to hire 2 more nurses, because that's going to, make an improvement. I'd support that. Just like I would have supported the chief if we wanted to actually double the drug unit to 16 officers. But what we're presented, we're very limited in what we can do. We can cut and we can talk. That's all we can do up here. And I think what you've heard from folks is we're not comfortable with a management position per se. But I think there's plenty of support for what your department does overall. The amount that was cut was not the full amount that was budgeted there. So I think that's an effort, and I'm going to speak for Council Campbell, why I support it is because that's an effort to give your department additional resources, although it may not be the exact position that you're looking for. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And again, I know you do a wonderful job. You're very responsive. I hope you continue to take my calls. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Council Finn, just motioning, or?
Oh, did it?
You good? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Council-
Council Kane's amendment to reduce personal services by $60,000.
Councilor King.
Yes.
Councilor DeBona.
Yes.
Councilor Finn.
Yes.
Councilor Harris.
Absolutely not.
Councilor Hughes. Councilor Forrest.
No.
Councilor Yang.
Yes.
Councilor Calmucci.
Yes.
Chairman Cole.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-2.
Motion carries 6-2. Drew, sincerely, thank you for all that you do. All right,
The
folks.
rest of the budget passed? Haven't heard that yet.
Yeah, motion to approve as amended.
And any further discussion on Mr. Shealy's budget? Motion to approve.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you very much, Council.
Okay, next item on the agenda is also a carryover from the first finance committee. First and second, it's kind of all blending at this point. But either way, James Passes, planning director. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Council. During my prior presentation, the evening of May 9th and morning of May 10th, Councilor Finn asked for additional information. As he's just mentioned earlier, there are an additional 11 planning and community development employees who are funded under federal budgets and grants. It was made clear that additional financial and human resources information would be helpful to this body. This information has been produced by Community Development Director Sean Glennon, who has joined me tonight, and a 9-page summary was forwarded to the chairman and to the entire council and has been provided to you all. So I would just ask that if you have any questions that could be clarified, we'd be happy to answer them, myself or Mr. Glenn.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a unique situation. And part of the reason that I put it on hold last time was past budgets, again, traditionally the planning budget had some of the fewest tax dollars in it because of the federal resources, other resources that help support the function of planning within the city. In the past budgets have reflected those positions, indicating where it was offset, so that you had a total picture of exactly what the planning department consisted of and where the other additional resources, aside from tax dollars, or I should say property tax dollars, that are supporting that. I had the opportunity to again, speak with Mr. Glennon, and again, we looked at each, right? I think, and again, Sean, it's about 6.5 FTEs roughly that we're talking about, that six full-time equivalencies that really make up some of the planning components. What throws this budget off this year, and this is something that I can remind with the audit, that back in 2010 we raised, and it's the wisdom of supporting staff positions through the bond process, through the DIP. Because essentially what's occurring here, and why this is such a rapid jump, is that there's 2 employees who've been working since well before 2010, I guess at this point, through this time, but now are being integrated into the planning department. And so what we have is essentially a phrase you'll hear up here often. We created through the bond a kind of historical deficit almost in terms of the budget. This is very different than some of the other cuts that have been proposed in the past this year, in the sense that This is not about adding new positions. These are about people currently working within the city and ingrained in the process, whether we're talking about downtown or other economic development issues and the like. Planning department is critical to the city of Quincy, without a doubt. And it's one of those departments that actually produces resources for the city. In fact, very recently, we've just had another experience of the expertise on display. The McKinney federal funding dollars, tier 2 dollars, that across the state, cities, with a couple of exceptions, took a bath. They lost tremendous amounts of money and left money on the table. The Quincy Consortium, Sean, if you want to call Sean up, anyway, but, the amount of new resources, Sean, through the Tier 2 funding that Quincy Consortium received.
2 new projects, and that will serve an additional 40 families. I don't have a dollar amount.
Right, okay, but the bottom line is wherever people are cutting, even including cutting permanent housing in Quincy, they've added, and the reason that they've added there, and the reason that they were successful and others might not have been, was because of the role the planning department plays in this process, working in concert with HUD, and making certain that we're doing essentially what's required. And I think that that's been a big part of it. It's very hard for me right now to see these positions added into this because of the history in terms of how this is developed. But at the same time, I'm very conscious of the fact that these are people who are already integrated and are working within that specific department. I'm hoping as we move forward, we're very careful about bond authorization in the future, because I just don't think it's a good practice. We checked it back in 2010, if through you to the auditor can confirm this, and with the Department of Revenue, and also through our own bond legal counsel. You know, there's nothing illegal if it's, again, tied specifically to that bond. But just because that's true doesn't make it a good practice. I really believe that we need to be very careful with any bond authorizations moving forward, that we control that. Because, again, if not, we wind up in particular situations like this. I think given the performance of the planning department and the fact that these are 2 positions, these are not, I do not feel comfortable being in a position of actually cutting specific jobs right now at this point. So I would, given the explanation, I would highly recommend that those other planners and different things be integrated back into the budget as it's presented, so we have a sense of what that brings to the city. But with that, I would recommend passage.
Recommendations moving for the planning budget. Any discussion? Council Palmucci.
If I could, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and more for Jim and you, Sean, but you're welcome to say thank you. Jim, I appreciate you getting me some information after your previous presentation specific to the CDBG funding. Appreciate that. Your department is very responsive, very talented group of individuals. Whenever I get to interact with members of the planning department, I always leave with a headache because they have so much knowledge and they are so excited when you ask the littlest of questions to give you so much more knowledge than you actually need. It shows you how invested they are in the city, making the city better, and in their jobs. I mean, just the level of professionalism and talent that you have in that department. I think you're very lucky. You're moving from the mayor's office, where there's probably a different talent pool, one might suggest, but in the planning department, you're chock full of talent. And your explanation to me offline between your last presentation and this one about how, what Councilor Finn was saying, these positions coming over, This is actually something that I've been arguing for years with the DIF, that we're funding positions out of the DIF. The DIF is like a credit card, if you will. It's borrowed money, so we're borrowing on an annual basis, or have been up to this point, borrowing on an annual basis to pay salaries of people that are essentially permanent, or they've become fixtures in their resources to the city for not only just things with downtown, but throughout the development of the neighborhoods and everything else going on in the planning department. So I applaud this move. Even though it's increasing this particular budget, it's taking positions off of the credit card and putting them on the monthly bill, if you will, which I think is fiscally responsible. I put it right in line with the mayor's efforts over the last couple of years to put the snow and ice budget to a realistic rather than an imaginary low number that has never been hit, and increasing amounts to the stabilization. I think it's fiscally prudent, it's a responsible thing to do. As Councilman Finn said, we're creating essentially a structural deficit by funding these folks with borrowed money that is eventually going to run out. The people are still going to be here. And it's not kosher, in my opinion, to have done that for the years that we've done it. So I think because it's financially unsustainable. So I'm glad that we're taking this step forward, and I'll support the budget. But I just want to thank you for getting me information and clarifying that to me, and in fact for the mayor and you for proposing to change the way in which we fund these very important positions. So I'll support the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you that we got this clarified and everything. Understanding from Councilor Palmucci that positions have come off that and been put onto planning. Is that correct?
One
is. And what's the other one coming from?
it was a federally funded position.
Okay.
That is going to be funded by the city.
Okay. And, you know, this goes back to T-Pal, and I feel so bad for poor Mike Coffey. He was up here, and we were just firing away, and it would be really nice if you could just and it goes back to Councilor Finn with positions and how many per, if you just italicized it right in here, you probably wouldn't be back here tonight. You would have probably just said, you know what, this is great, this is clear cut. I hate to use the word transparency, I'd rather use clear cut, but it's clear. Everybody can see it, everybody can make a judgment on it. You know, and that kind of goes back to the T-Pal, the new positions that are being pushed over from fire department, that's being pushed over from some public works. If we all get a little italicized, it's going to be a lot clearer for us councilors to kind of go forward. But I want to thank you for coming back here, and it's clear. We've got all the answers that was unsolved from before, and I'm willing to approve as well for this. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councilor Yang?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted some clarification on this organizational chart that you gave to us. It says here that the green cells are paid under the CDBG as an allocation, and then the orange cells are paid under program delivery funds. Can you just clarify where that's coming from?
Yes, the CDBG is the Community Development Block Grant. The other funds are actually implementing funds. If you want to give them a sense of the difference between the two, if you would.
Great question. And green cells are subject to the planning admin cap under the grant, which is subject to 20%. Can't spend more than 20% on planning admin, which would be folks that work day to day and administering the programs. The cells in green, orange rather, are what we call program delivery, meaning they're actually carrying out a service that that we monitor. So the housing rehab folks, they're providing housing rehab loans to residents. We have an intern who is the community development coordinator, and then the agent liaison is someone who's actually going out to sites across the city, QCAP, helping with fuel systems, a couple of the Quincy Housing Authority units or sites. We have Ken Gorrington Health as a community center to do translation services. So those are people that are providing a service to the residents, whereas the cells in green are actually administering the grant itself.
Okay, and where are the funds to pay those positions that are in orange? Where is that?
It's under CDBG. It's under a separate line item.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
This is all federal funded, that entire page.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from any other councils? Jim, I'll just kind of wrap it up. I know there's a motion on the floor to move your budget. I just wanted to point out a couple of things. I think you've done a phenomenal job from a leadership standpoint in transition to planning. And I know it wasn't a totally foreign continent before you would deal with that stuff in your prior role, but there's a lot going on in the city. I know you see all areas of the city. I just have my own little slice of, Ward 2 over there. But, the professionalism that comes out of your staff, when with you, and just their willingness to engage, kind of explain sometimes complex issues into easily digestible formats is greatly appreciated. When we think about investment, I know we talked about the budget being essentially the binding document for the city, and really driving home as to our core beliefs. I think that where we are from a standpoint, I can hear the construction equipment, faster work outside. There's just so much of a need, not only in downtown, but in the periphery, to have professionals, have access, have staff to work with all of us, but I'll speak for myself as a board counselor, because we are just, the pipeline's full. There's an appetite to build, and like I tell people at every single meeting, the goal is, if it fits inside of a neighborhood, it's responsible development. And I think you and your department help us to get to, an end goal, provided that the project makes sense in the neighborhood. So, I just want to take the opportunity to just thank you for everything that you do in your department. And there's a motion on the floor to move passage. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, James.
Thank you very much. And I would like to actually thank Councilor Finn for giving me the opportunity to highlight the community development side of the house as well. Although this is the planning department budget that comes before you. And Councilor Palmucci, yes, I have a great staff, and thank you very much for saying so. Thank you very much.
And just as a reminder, folks, before we adjourn, we do have another budget hearing to take place on June 8th, where we'll talk to the traffic, parking, and lighting, as well as the public works and fire department, and then also June 13th to take up those other matters pending the committee. So with that, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion adjourned.